Three armed men, one tech CEO, a single father with a past he's buried deep. When Eli Turner's quiet morning shift at Maple Street Diner explodes into violence, he has 4.3 seconds to decide: stay invisible or become the hero his daughter needs him to be. What happens next will change three lives forever and expose a conspiracy that reaches back 20 years. Stay with me until the end and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. This is a story about second chances, impossible choices, and the price of doing what's right. The morning sun cut through the Venetian blinds of Maple Street Diner in soft, buttery stripes that fell across worn vinyl booths and a counter that had seen better decades. The smell of coffee, strong, slightly burnt the way regulars liked it, mixed with bacon grease and the faint chemical sweetness of industrial cleaner. It was 7:43 a.m. on a Tuesday, and the world still felt manageable. Eli Turner moved through the narrow space between tables with the efficiency of a man who'd learned to navigate tighter corridors in darker places. 6'2", broad-shouldered but lean, he carried himself with a stillness that most people mistook for calm. His hands were steady as he refilled coffee cups, his smile practiced but never quite reaching his eyes. The Navy had taught him to compartmentalize, to function on autopilot when necessary, and working the breakfast shift at a third-rate diner in suburban Connecticut required exactly that kind of emotional distance. "More coffee, Mr. Patterson?" Eli's voice was low, pleasant, forgettable. The old man at booth 3 grunted his approval without looking up from his newspaper. Eli poured, moved on. His internal clock told him it was 12 minutes until his shift ended. 12 minutes until he could collect Sophie from the corner booth, where she'd been working on her math homework since 6:30, drive her to school, and then collapse in their studio apartment for 3 hours before his afternoon shift at the warehouse. This was life now. This was normal. Sophie looked up from her worksheet as he passed, her dark eyes, his eyes, bright despite the fatigue that shadowed them. 9 years old and already too familiar with hospital waiting rooms and insurance denials. She'd inherited her mother's smile, the one that could light up a room, but lately that smile came less frequently. "Almost done, Peanut?" he asked, touching her shoulder briefly as he moved past. "Two more problems," she said, chewing her pencil eraser. "Dad, is a negative times a negative really a positive? That doesn't make sense." "That's because math is a liar," he said, deadpan, and was rewarded with her giggle. Worth it. Everything was worth it for that sound. The bell above the door chimed. Eli's training kicked in before his conscious mind registered the details. 3 men, late 20s to early 30s, moving wrong, too purposeful, too synchronized. The first one through the door swept the room with his eyes in a pattern Eli recognized: threat assessment. The second kept his right hand inside his jacket. The third locked the door behind them and flipped the sign to closed. Time didn't slow down, that was movie bullshit, but Eli's perception sharpened. Adrenaline dumped into his bloodstream. His heart rate elevated to exactly 120 beats per minute, the optimal zone for tactical performance. His peripheral vision expanded. The diner held 11 people, not counting himself and Sophie. Mr. Patterson at booth 3. Maria, the other waitress, behind the counter. Danny, the cook, invisible in the kitchen but probably hungover. 2 truckers at the counter. A young couple in booth 5 who'd been arguing about money. 3 construction workers in booth 7, still muddy from an early job. And the woman in booth 1. She sat alone, facing the door, wearing sunglasses despite the dim interior. Designer clothes trying and failing to look casual. Eli had clocked her as out of place the moment she'd walked in 40 minutes ago. Money, power, hiding, the trifecta of someone running from something. The lead man pulled out a gun. "Nobody moves, nobody dies," he announced, his voice carrying the flat effect of someone who'd said this before. "We're here for one person. The rest of you are irrelevant." The diner erupted in the predictable chaos of civilians encountering violence and screaming. One of the truckers knocked over his coffee. Maria dropped a plate. The sound of shattering ceramic was absurdly loud. Eli didn't move. His body remained relaxed, his face carefully blank, but his mind was sprinting through calculations. 3 hostiles, at least 2 confirmed weapons. Unknown additional firepower. 11 civilians. Unknown tactical training of the hostiles. Unknown objective. No. Known objective. All three men were looking at the woman in booth 1. She'd removed her sunglasses. Eli caught a glimpse of her face for the first time, really saw her, and recognition flickered. He didn't follow business news, didn't care about tech billionaires or Silicon Valley drama, but even he'd seen this face. Claire Donovan, CEO of Nexus Technologies, Forbes covers, TED Talks, the woman who'd revolutionized cloud security and made her first billion before 30, and now apparently someone's target. Ms. Donovan, the lead gunman said, almost polite. We're going to take a ride together. You come quietly, nobody gets hurt. You make this difficult, people die, starting with the kid. The gun swung towards Sophie. Everything in Eli's world crystallized to a single point of absolute clarity. The Navy had spent 6 years teaching him to kill, but his training had broken him down and rebuilt him into something harder, sharper. SEAL Team 4 had refined that weapon through deployments in Afghanistan, Iraq, and places that didn't officially exist. He'd learned to shoot, to fight, to infiltrate, to survive. He'd learned to make impossible decisions in fractions of seconds. He'd also learned that some things were worth dying for. Hey! Eli's voice cut through the chaos, calm as glass. Hey, asshole, eyes on me. The lead gunman's attention snapped to him. Behind Eli, Sophie made a small, frightened sound. He couldn't look at her. If he looked at her, his nerve would break. You're making a mistake, Eli said, taking a slow step away from Sophie's booth, drawing them away from her. You don't want to do this here. Too many witnesses, too many variables. You're smarter than this. Get on the ground, the gunman ordered. Can't do that, Eli said. Another step. His hands were visible, empty, non-threatening. His body language read as frightened but compliant. Every piece of his training said to wait, to assess, to not engage unless absolutely necessary. But Sophie was in the kill zone. I said, get on the ground. You're not going to shoot, Eli said, and took another step. Close enough now. Almost. Too loud. Too messy. You need her alive and cooperative. That means you need leverage, not corpses. So let's all take a breath and... The gunman's finger tightened on the trigger. Eli moved. The distance between them was 8 feet. Eli covered it in 1.2 seconds. His first strike was a palm heel to the gunman's wrist, redirecting the weapon away from civilians. His second was an elbow to the man's jaw, delivered with enough force to rattle his brainstem. The gun fell. Eli caught it before it hit the ground. The second gunman was already drawing. Eli dropped low, letting the first hostile's body collapse between them as a shield. The shot went high, punching into the ceiling and raining down acoustic tile. Screaming intensified. Eli came up with the captured weapon, center mass, controlled double tap. The second gunman went down hard, clutching his chest. Ballistic vest. Good gear. These weren't amateurs. The third man had Sophie. Time did something strange then, something Eli's brain couldn't quite process. The third gunman had crossed the diner. When? How? And had Sophie by her collar, lifting her out of the booth. She was making a sound Eli had never heard before, a high, breathless keening of pure terror. Drop it, the third gunman said. Drop it, or I snap her neck. Eli's hands were steady. His breathing was steady. Everything inside him was screaming. He dropped the gun. Smart, the third gunman said. Now step back. Eli stepped back. His mind was racing through options. Distance, 12 feet. Hostile's position, using Sophie as a shield. No clean shot, even if he'd kept the weapon. Hostile's mental state, escalated, desperate. Probability of Sophie surviving the next 30 seconds, dropping rapidly. Let the kid go, Eli said. She's not part of this. She is now. The gunman's eyes flicked to Claire Donovan, who'd stood up from her booth. You, me, car, now. Anyone follows, the kid dies. Claire's face was pale but composed. She had the look of someone used to making decisions under pressure. Let her go first. Not how this works. Then shoot me here, Claire said flatly, because I'm not going anywhere while you're holding a child. The gunman's face twisted. His grip on Sophie tightened. She whimpered. Eli felt something snap inside him. Not his control, that remained diamond hard, but the part of him that had been human before the Navy, before the deployments, before he'd learned that some people were just meat sacks that needed to stop moving. That part broke loose. "Look at me," Eli said softly. The gunman looked. Eli had been standing with his weight on his back foot, hands visible, posture submissive. In a single motion, he shifted forward, his right hand snapping out to grab the salt shaker from the nearest table. His throw was perfect. 18 feet, moving target, high-stress situation. The salt shaker hit the gunman's face, shattering against his cheekbone. The man's grip loosened for a fraction of a second. Sophie dropped like Eli had taught her during their what-if games. Drop, roll, cover your head. She executed it perfectly. Eli was already moving. He covered the distance in 3 strides. The gunman was bringing his weapon around. Eli got there first. His hand clamped around the gunman's wrist, controlling the weapon. His other hand, knife-edge strike to the throat, textbook, brutally efficient. The gunman gagged. Eli twisted the wrist, feeling bones grind and separate. The gun fell. Eli caught it, spun it, fired. The shot took the first gunman, just now recovering from the initial assault, in the shoulder. He went down again, this time staying down. Silence crashed over the diner like a physical force. Eli stood in the center of the room, weapon trained on the downed hostiles, breathing steady. His hands didn't shake. His heart rate was already dropping back toward normal. This was the part of himself he'd tried to bury, the part Sophie could never know about. "Sophie," he said quietly, "eyes closed, baby. Keep them closed." "Daddy?" Her voice was so small. "Eyes closed. I'm right here. You're safe." He heard her sob, but she obeyed. Good girl. His perfect, brave girl. Maria was on the phone with 911, her voice high and fast. Mr. Patterson hadn't moved from his booth, in shock or just stubborn. Eli couldn't tell. The truckers were on the floor. The young couple was clutching each other. The construction workers were staring at Eli like he'd just sprouted wings. Claire Donovan stood frozen, her hand pressed to her mouth. "You should sit down," Eli told her. "Adrenaline crash is coming. You're going to feel it in about 90 seconds. She didn't sit. Instead, she walked toward him, stepping carefully around the first gunman's body. Up close, she was younger than he'd thought. Mid-30s maybe, with the kind of face that photographs made colder than reality. Her eyes were gray and sharp, and currently locked on him with an intensity that made him uncomfortable. "Who are you?" she asked. "Nobody," Eli said. "Just a waiter." "Bullshit." Her voice shook, but her gaze didn't waver. "Waiters don't move like that. Waiters don't shoot like that. Who are you, really?" "Someone who needs you to sit down before you fall down," Eli said. He could hear sirens now, still distant but approaching fast. His mind was already shifting gears, thinking about the police interview, the media attention, the absolute nightmare this was about to become. He'd stayed off the grid for 3 years. 3 years of careful invisibility, gone in 90 seconds, all because he couldn't let them take Sophie. Worth it. Always worth it. Claire sat down heavily in the nearest booth. Her hands were shaking now. "They were going to kill me." "Probably not," Eli said, keeping his weapon trained on the gunmen. "Kidnap, ransom, leverage. You're worth more alive." He paused. "Any idea who sent them?" "I have a list," she said bitterly. "It's not a short one." The sirens were close now. Eli finally allowed himself to look at Sophie. She was still curled in the booth, eyes squeezed shut, hands over her ears. His heart cracked. "Sophie, Peanut." "It's over. You can look now." She opened her eyes and saw him, and her face crumpled. She was up and running to him before he could stop her, wrapping her thin arms around his waist, sobbing into his shirt. The gun was still in his hand. He couldn't put it down until the police arrived, couldn't risk one of the hostiles recovering and grabbing it. So he just stood there, weapon trained on broken men, while his daughter cried and the sirens screamed closer and his carefully constructed life disintegrated like smoke. Claire watched them with an expression he couldn't read. The police arrived in a chaos of flashing lights and shouted commands. Eli set the weapon down carefully, stepped away from it, kept his hands visible. He knew the drill. Don't make any sudden moves. Don't give them a reason. He was a 6'2" male with military bearings standing over 3 injured men with a gun on the floor. The optics were bad. "On the ground," Now! Eli complied, kneeling first, then prone. Sophie was screaming his name. Someone pulled her away. That hurt worse than anything that had happened in the fight. He saved us! That was Maria, bless her. Those men came in with guns. He stopped them. He's a hero. The officer kneeling on Eli's back didn't ease up, but his partner was already talking to witnesses. The story came out in a rush of overlapping voices. The consensus was clear. Eli was the good guy. The men on the floor were the threat. It took 20 minutes to sort out. 20 minutes of Eli face down on the diner floor, hands cuffed behind his back, while Sophie cried and witnesses gave statements and paramedics worked on the gunmen. All three would live. Eli had controlled his shots, his strikes. He'd used exactly as much force as necessary and no more. That was training talking. The other part of him, the part that had seen Sophie in that man's grip, had wanted to keep hitting until there was nothing left to hit. Finally, they uncuffed him. A detective named Morrison took his statement, and Eli gave him the minimum. Ex-Navy, separated 6 years ago, working 2 jobs, single father, wrong place, wrong time, did what he had to do. He left out the SEAL part, left out the deployments, left out everything that mattered. Morrison looked at him like he knew there was more, but wasn't going to push. Not today. You're free to go. We'll need you to come in for a formal statement tomorrow. What about my daughter? She's with Child Services right now, just temporary, just until we... No. Eli's voice was flat, absolute. No, she stays with me. Sir, she witnessed a violent... She's mine. She stays with me. Non-negotiable. They stared at each other. Morrison blinked first. I'll see what I can do. What he did was bring Sophie back 10 minutes later, wrapped in a foil blanket that made her look impossibly small. She launched herself at Eli again, and this time he caught her properly, lifting her up despite the fact that she was getting too big for this. She wrapped around him like a limpet. I was so scared, she whispered into his neck. I know, Peanut, I know, but you were so brave. You did exactly what I taught you. I'm so proud of you. Are you in trouble? No, I'm not in trouble. Everything's okay now. It was a lie, but a necessary one. Nothing was okay. Nothing would be okay again. Claire Donovan was giving her own statement to a different detective, but her eyes kept drifting to Eli and Sophie. When she finished, she walked over. Up close, holding his daughter, Eli realized how tall she was, maybe 5'10". She looked at Sophie first, her expression softening. Is she all right? She will be, Eli said. Claire nodded, then to Sophie, You were very brave. What's your name? Sophie. Her voice was muffled against Eli's shoulder, but she turned her head enough to be polite. Sophie Turner. I'm Claire. Your dad saved my life today, Sophie. I won't forget that. Sophie didn't respond. Eli felt her grip tighten. Claire looked at Eli. I need to speak with you. Not now. I understand you need to get her home, but soon. Tomorrow, maybe. I work tomorrow. Then I'll come to you. Where? Eli wanted to refuse. Every instinct screamed to put distance between himself and this woman, this problem, this complication. But he saw something in her eyes, a determination that suggested she'd find him whether he gave his address or not. Maple Street Diner, he said finally. Lunch shift. 11 to 3. I'll be there at noon. She touched Sophie's back gently. Take care of each other. Then she was gone, escorted out by her own security detail. Where the hell had they been during the attack? And surrounded by a sudden swarm of reporters who'd caught wind of the story. Eli carried Sophie out the back entrance. The news vans were already multiplying like viruses. Someone shouted his name. He ignored them. His truck was parked 2 blocks away, a 15-year-old Ford that burned oil and had a passenger door that only opened from the outside. He buckled Sophie into the front seat, no back seat, no room for one, and drove home through side streets, avoiding main roads, avoiding anything that looked like media. Their apartment was on the 3rd floor of a building that had given up on maintenance sometime in the Reagan administration. One room that served as bedroom, living room, and dining room. A kitchenette that was really just a hot plate and a mini fridge. A bathroom with a shower that only worked if you jiggled the handle just right. Home. Sophie went straight to her corner, a mattress on the floor with her stuffed animals arranged in precise order, and curled up with Mr. Bear, a threadbare thing she'd had since birth. Eli stood in the doorway, watching her, feeling the weight of the day settle onto his shoulders like lead. His phone buzzed. 18 missed calls. 34 text messages. He didn't recognize most of the numbers. Word traveled fast. One text was from Maria. "News is calling you, the diner hero. They want to interview you. Sending you the reporter's number." Eli deleted it. Another was from his warehouse supervisor. "Saw the news. You okay? Take tomorrow off. Paid." That was unexpected and appreciated. The rest were media requests, friends he hadn't spoken to in years suddenly emerging from the woodwork, and one from a number with a Silicon Valley area code. "This is Michael Chen, Chief of Staff to Claire Donovan. Ms. Donovan would like to express her gratitude. Please call at your earliest convenience." Eli turned off his phone. He made Sophie mac and cheese from a box, the fancy kind with actual cheese powder instead of the neon orange stuff. Comfort food. She picked at it, not really eating, just pushing noodles around her bowl. "Dad?" she said finally. "Yeah, Peanut?" "Those men, they were bad men, right?" "Yeah, they were bad men. And you stopped them." "Yeah, because that's what you do. You stop bad people." Eli's throat tightened. That's not exactly in the Navy," Sophie continued, her voice small but certain. "You were a hero, like today. You saved people." He'd never told her specifics, just, "I was in the Navy, and I can't talk about most of it." But she was smart, his daughter. Too smart. She'd pieced together enough from fragments, from nightmares she'd heard him wake from the way he moved through the world like a man always checking exits. "It's complicated," he said. "I'm glad you were there," Sophie whispered. "I'm glad you knew how to stop them." "Me too, Peanut." She didn't finish her dinner. He didn't push. They went through the bedtime routine by muscle memory, teeth, pajamas, bathroom. She crawled into her mattress and he sat beside her, like he did every night, ready to read. "Tell me about Mom," she said instead. Eli's heart clenched. "What about her? Was she brave like you?" "Braver," he said honestly. "Your mom was the bravest person I ever knew." "Did she save people too?" "In her own way. She was a nurse, remember? She helped people when they were hurt. She made them better. Until she got sick." "Until she got sick," Eli agreed. "Breast cancer. Stage 4 by the time they caught it. Sophie had been 3. They'd had 2 years together, mother and daughter, before the end. Sometimes Eli wondered if Sophie really remembered her, or if she just remembered the stories he told. "Do I look like her?" "You have her smile, her eyes, her laugh." He touched her hair, dark and straight like his, but everything else was Emma. "And her heart. You have her heart, Sophie. The best parts of both of us." She was quiet for a moment. Then, "Dad, are we safe now?" The question gutted him, because he didn't know. Those men had been professionals. They'd had intel on Claire Donovan's location, her routine. They'd been organized, prepared. And now Eli had put himself and Sophie directly in the spotlight. If whoever sent those men wanted revenge, or wanted to eliminate witnesses, or wanted to finish what they'd started. "Yes," he lied. "We're safe, I promise." She believed him because she was 9, and he was her father, and that was what children did. She fell asleep within minutes, exhaustion claiming her. Eli sat beside her for a long time, watching her breathe, feeling the weight of all his failures and all his fears pressing down on him. He'd left the Navy to keep her safe, left the life, the purpose, the brotherhood, taken every odd job he could find, lived in this shithole apartment, worked himself to exhaustion day after day, all to give her a normal life. One morning, one decision, and now the world knew his face. His phone buzzed again, even though he'd turned it off. He checked. More messages flooding in, but one caught his eye. Another Silicon Valley area code. "Mr. Turner, this is Rebecca Walsh, Claire Donovan's attorney. We need to speak urgently regarding this morning's incident. Please call regardless of the time." Eli deleted it. Then he pulled up his contacts and scrolled to a name he hadn't called in 3 years. Martinez. his old lieutenant. One of the few who'd understood why Eli had to leave, who'd kept in touch sporadically, who'd promised, if you ever need anything. The call connected on the third ring. This is Martinez. It's Turner. A pause. Holy shit. Eli? I saw the news. That was you? Yeah. Man, when you said you were done, I didn't think you meant you were going to go full civilian action hero. What the hell happened? Eli gave him the short version. When he finished, Martinez was quiet. Eli, you know this doesn't just go away, right? You're all over the news. Ex-Navy hero. They're digging into your background. How deep can they dig? Depends. Your service record is mostly sealed, but your name and basic service dates are public. If they look hard enough, if they have the right connections. Martinez trailed off. There are people who might recognize you, people from the old days. Not all of them friendly. I know. What are you going to do? I don't know, Eli admitted. Keep my head down. Hope it blows over. And if it doesn't? Eli looked at Sophie, sleeping peacefully in her corner. Then I deal with it, like always. You need backup. You call me. I mean it, Eli. You're not alone. Thanks, brother. He ended the call and sat in the dark, listening to the city noise filtering through thin walls. A siren wailed past, police or ambulance, impossible to tell. Somewhere below, a couple was fighting in Spanish. A dog barked. Normal city sounds. Normal life. Except nothing was normal anymore. Eli's mind kept circling back to Claire Donovan. Why had she been at that diner? A woman worth billions, eating alone in a third-rate breakfast joint in suburban Connecticut. She'd been hiding from something or someone. The attack hadn't been random. Those men had known exactly where to find her, which meant someone on her staff had leaked her location, which meant she had a bigger problem than just one failed kidnapping attempt. Not your problem, Eli told himself firmly. You saved her life, debt paid. Move on. But he couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. He must have dozed off at some point because he woke to sunlight streaming through the window and Sophie shaking his shoulder. Dad, there are people outside. Eli was on his feet instantly, adrenaline spiking. He crossed to the window and looked down. News vans. At least 5 of them, cameras and reporters clustered around the building entrance. Someone must have found his address. Shit, he muttered. Dad. Sorry. Stay away from the window, Peanut. His phone showed 43 missed calls and counting. The warehouse had called 6 times. The diner had called 4 times. Numbers he didn't recognize made up the rest. One text from Maria. They're offering money for interviews. Big money. Channel 5 offered me $5,000 just to talk about you. I said no, but other people might not. Eli's jaw clenched. $5,000 would cover 3 months of Sophie's medication. He couldn't blame anyone for taking that offer. Another text from Michael Chen. Mr. Turner, please respond. Ms. Donovan is concerned for your safety and would like to discuss options. We can provide security and legal counsel. That made him pause. Security. Legal counsel. Things he couldn't afford and might desperately need. Before he could respond, someone knocked on the door. Eli tensed, positioning himself between Sophie and the entrance. Yeah? Mr. Turner? I'm Detective Morrison. We spoke yesterday. Can we talk? Eli checked the peephole. Morrison, looking tired and holding 2 coffee cups. Alone. He opened the door but didn't invite the detective in. Something wrong? Just wanted to give you a heads up. Morrison handed him one of the coffees. The men from yesterday. 2 are singing. They're giving up their employer. Eli's pulse quickened. Who? Can't say officially, but off the record? Morrison glanced around, lowered his voice. They're claiming they were hired by someone inside Nexus Technologies, someone with access to Donovan's schedule and security protocols. This wasn't a random kidnapping. It was an inside job. Why are you telling me this? Because you and your daughter are witnesses, and because whoever orchestrated this might not be done. Professional hit teams don't usually stop after one failure. Morrison met his eyes. Watch your back, Turner, and maybe take Ms. Donovan up on whatever she's offering. You're going to need friends with resources. The detective left. Eli closed the door and leaned against it, processing. Inside job, professional team, unfinished business. His phone rang. Silicon Valley area code. Against his better judgment, he answered. Mr. Turner? A woman's voice, crisp and professional. This is Rebecca Walsh, Ms. Donovan's attorney. I'm in a car outside your building. I'd like to speak with you and arrange secure transportation out of here before the media situation escalates further. Do you have 5 minutes? Eli looked at Sophie, who was watching him with those two old eyes, looked at the window, at the news vans multiplying like hydra heads, looked at his phone, still buzzing with calls and messages, looked at his life burning down around him one headline at a time. 5 minutes, he said. Excellent. There's a back entrance through the maintenance corridor. Take that. I'll meet you at the service door with a car. Black Mercedes. Connecticut plates. 10 minutes. She hung up before he could argue. Eli looked at Sophie. Pack your backpack. Everything important. We're going for a ride. Where? I don't know yet, but anywhere's better than here. She moved quickly, stuffing Mr. Bear and her homework and a change of clothes into her school backpack. Eli grabbed his own bag. Already packed, always packed, a habit from his Navy days. Go bag with clothes, documents, cash, first aid kit, ready for anything. They went down the back stairs, avoiding the front entrance where reporters were beginning to congregate in the lobby. The maintenance corridor smelled like mildew and rat poison. The service door was locked, but Eli popped it with his knife in 3 seconds, another skill from another life. The black Mercedes was waiting, engine running. A woman in her 50s with silver hair and a power suit stood beside the back door. Rebecca Walsh, he presumed. Mr. Turner, Sophie, please, get in quickly. They got in. The car pulled away smoothly, driver navigating through alleys and side streets with the ease of someone who knew the area, or had planned the route carefully. Where are we going? Eli asked. Somewhere safe, Rebecca said. Somewhere we can talk without cameras and reporters. Ms. Donovan is waiting. I said I'd meet her at the diner at noon. The diner is currently surrounded by 24 media vehicles and has been forced to close. Noon is no longer viable. Rebecca pulled out a tablet, brought up a news site. Eli's face was everywhere. Diner hero saves tech CEO. Ex-Navy father stops kidnapping. Who is Eli Turner? Some of the articles had started digging. His Navy service dates, his hometown in Ohio, Emma's obituary from 6 years ago, Sophie's name, her school, his daughter's name, in the news for anyone to see. Make them take that down, Eli said, his voice dangerous. Her name, take it down. We're working on it, Rebecca assured him, but you need to understand, this story has national attention now. By this evening, it'll be international. You're not going back to anonymity, Mr. Turner. That door is closed. The question is how you manage what comes next. The car pulled into an underground parking garage beneath a glass tower. Private elevator, keycard access, up to the 30th floor. The doors opened on a penthouse suite that was probably worth more than Eli would earn in 10 lifetimes. Claire Donovan stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, staring out at the city. She turned when they entered. She looked different than she had in the diner, more composed, more commanding. Her hair was pulled back severely. Her suit was probably designer, but understated. Everything about her screamed power and control. Then she saw Sophie, and something in her expression shifted, softened. Sophie, she said warmly, I'm glad you're here. Are you hungry? There's food in the kitchen. Anything you want. Sophie looked at Eli. He nodded. She disappeared into the next room, backpack still clutched to her chest. Claire waited until she was gone, then turned to Eli. Thank you for coming. I know this must be overwhelming. What do you want? Eli asked bluntly. To say thank you, to compensate you appropriately for what you did, and to make sure you and Sophie are safe. We're safe. Are you? Claire gestured to Rebecca, who pulled up more news footage on her tablet. This is from an hour ago. A reporter confronted your warehouse supervisor about your background. 3 different news organizations have filed FOIA requests for your military records. By tomorrow, someone's going to connect the dots to SEAL Team 4. When that happens, the attention will double. Eli's jaw tightened. She wasn't wrong. Those men who attacked me, Claire continued, they were hired by someone inside my company, someone who wants me gone. Someone who now knows that you're a threat to their plans. She paused. You're a loose end, Mr. Turner. And in my experience, powerful people don't like loose ends. So what are you suggesting? Let me help you. Security for Sophie, legal representation to protect your privacy, financial compensation for what you've lost, your anonymity, your peace of mind. I don't want money. Everyone wants money, Claire said. Not cruel, just factual. But I'm guessing what you really want is for your daughter to be safe and for this to go away. I can't make it go away, but I can help you manage it, and I can protect Sophie. Eli studied her, looked for the angle, the manipulation, the hidden agenda, found only exhaustion and something that looked almost like fear. Why do you care? He asked. Because you saved my life. Because I know what it's like to have the world watching your every move. Because I have resources you need, and you have skills I need. She took a breath. Because in about 5 minutes, someone is going to walk through that door with an offer that will change everything. And I wanted to talk to you first, honestly. No bullshit. As if on cue, the elevator chimed. Claire's chief of staff, Michael Chen, emerged, followed by a man in an expensive suit. The man looked at Eli with the calculating gaze of someone used to reading assets and liabilities. Ms. Donovan, the man said, I see you've already recruited Mr. Turner. Excellent. That saves time. He extended his hand to Eli. I'm Cameron Steele. I was your father's partner many years ago. And just like that, Eli's past reached up and grabbed him by the throat. Eli's hand remained at his side, refusing the offered handshake. His mind was racing through memories he'd spent years trying to bury. His father's workshop, the smell of motor oil and cigarettes, hushed phone conversations that stopped when Eli walked into the room. And a name, mentioned only once before his father died under circumstances the police had called accidental. Cameron Steele. I don't know you, Eli said, his voice flat. Steele's smile didn't waver, but something predatory flickered behind his eyes. Your father and I worked together at Nexus Technologies in its earliest days. He was brilliant, ahead of his time in network security architecture. His death was a tremendous loss to the industry. He died in a car accident when I was 17. Eli's words were measured, controlled. Single vehicle collision. They said he fell asleep at the wheel. A tragedy, Steele agreed, finally lowering his rejected hand. I tried to reach out to you and your mother afterward, but you'd both disappeared. The Navy, I later learned. A fine choice for a young man needing direction. Claire was watching this exchange with an expression Eli couldn't quite read. Rebecca Walsh had gone very still, her fingers hovering over her tablet. Mr. Steele, Claire said carefully, I wasn't aware you knew Mr. Turner. You said you had information about yesterday's incident? Indeed. Steele moved to the windows, hands clasped behind his back like a general surveying a battlefield. I've spent the last 18 hours conducting my own investigation into the attack. The men who attempted to kidnap you were hired through a dark web marketplace by someone using cryptocurrency to cover their tracks. Very professional, very expensive. The police already told me it was an inside job, Claire said. The police know what we've allowed them to know. Steele turned back to face them. The leak came from within the company, yes, but the person who hired those men has been very careful to cover their tracks. Finding them will take resources, time, and expertise in areas where law enforcement is limited. Eli felt the conversation shifting, becoming something else entirely. This wasn't about yesterday's attack. This was about something deeper, older, more dangerous. What does any of this have to do with my father? Eli asked. Steele's expression turned sympathetic in a way that felt rehearsed. Your father discovered something 23 years ago, a vulnerability in our security protocols that could have destroyed the company if exploited. He wanted to go public to warn potential clients. I argued that we should fix it quietly, avoid the scandal. We had a disagreement, a falling out. He paused. 3 weeks later, he was dead. I've always wondered if his accident was really an accident. The room went silent. Eli could hear his own heartbeat, loud and insistent. Could hear Sophie in the kitchen, talking softly to herself the way she did when she was nervous. You think someone killed him, Eli said. Not a question. I think your father made powerful enemies by threatening to expose corporate malfeasance. And I think those same forces are still at work today. Steele gestured to Claire. Ms. Donovan has been asking uncomfortable questions about Nexus Technologies' original security architecture, questioning decisions made before she took control of the company. If she keeps digging, she might uncover the same things your father found. Claire's face had gone pale. You never told me this. In all the years I've worked with you, you never mentioned, because I had no proof, Steele interrupted smoothly. Only suspicions. But after yesterday's attack, I started pulling threads. And Mr. Turner's involvement is too coincidental to ignore. His father dies under mysterious circumstances. 23 years later, his son saves the life of the woman investigating those same old secrets. Someone is tying up loose ends. Eli's combat training was screaming at him. This was a setup, a manipulation. Steele was feeding them a narrative, controlling the conversation, pushing them toward a predetermined conclusion. But to what end? What do you want? Eli asked. I want to hire you. Steele's attention fixed on Eli with laser focus. Claire needs protection. Real protection. Not the rent-a-cops who failed so spectacularly yesterday. Someone with military training. Someone who can't be bought or intimidated. Someone with a personal stake in uncovering the truth about what happened to your father. I'm not a bodyguard. No, you're better. You're a Navy SEAL with 6 years of combat experience and a clearance level that still shows up in classified databases. You're someone who moves like smoke and thinks 3 steps ahead. You're exactly what Claire needs. How do you know my clearance level? Eli's voice dropped to something dangerous. Steele smiled. I have friends in relevant places, Mr. Turner. Friends who remember your service record. Friends who vouched for your capabilities when I made inquiries this morning. Eli felt the walls closing in. His anonymity was already shredded. Now his classified service history was being casually discussed by a corporate executive he'd met 5 minutes ago. Everything he'd built to protect Sophie was collapsing. Claire stepped between them, her body language defensive. Cameron, we discussed a security consultation, not a job offer. Mr. Turner has his own life, his own responsibilities, his own daughter with a rare autoimmune disorder requiring specialized medication that costs approximately $8,000 per month, Steele said quietly. I did my research, Mr. Turner. Sophie has systemic juvenile idiopathic arthritis. Her current treatment regimen is barely holding the disease at bay. There's an experimental treatment at Johns Hopkins that could potentially put her into remission, but it's not covered by insurance. Cost is roughly $200,000 for the full protocol. Eli's hands clenched into fists. His vision narrowed. You researched my daughter. I researched whether you could be motivated to accept a position that serves everyone's interests. Steele was unrepentant. Claire needs protection. You need resources. Sophie needs medical care. This is a simple transaction dressed in complicated clothing. Get out. Eli's voice was soft, lethal. Get out before I forget there are witnesses. Steele held up his hands in mock surrender. I meant no offense, merely laying out the facts. He turned to Claire. Ms. Donovan, think carefully about what you need right now. You have enemies inside your own company. Your security team failed you yesterday. Mr. Turner is a proven asset who has already demonstrated his capability and willingness to protect you. Pride is expensive. Sometimes the smart move is to accept help, regardless of how it's offered. He left, the elevator doors closing on his satisfied expression. The silence that followed was suffocating. Eli stood rigid, every muscle coiled tight, fighting the urge to put his fist through something. Someone. Claire looked shaken, Rebecca looked calculating, and Michael Chen looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. I didn't ask him to do that, Claire said finally. The research into Sophie, the job offer, that was all him. I wanted to help, to say thank you, not to manipulate you. But you knew he would, Eli said. You knew he'd dig into my background, find leverage, make a play. That's why he was coming. That's what you were warning me about. Claire met his eyes. Yes. I knew Cameron would see you as an asset to be acquired. That's how he thinks. Everything is a transaction. Everyone has a price. I brought you here first because I wanted to talk to you human to human before he turned it into a business negotiation. And now? Now I'm offering you what I should have offered from the start. Claire's voice was steady, certain. A job. Legitimate employment as a security consultant for Nexus Technologies. 6-month contract, $250,000, full medical benefits for you and Sophie. Not because of who your father was, not as leverage, but because I genuinely need someone I can trust. Yesterday proved my existing security is compromised. You're the only person who's proven they'll put themselves between me and a bullet. You don't know me. I know you have a 9-year-old daughter you're working yourself to death to support. I know you left a military career that clearly meant something to you in order to be her father. I know when armed men threatened her, you didn't hesitate. You just acted. That tells me everything I need to know about your character. Eli wanted to say no. Wanted to grab Sophie, walk out, disappear into whatever anonymity he could still salvage. But Steele's words echoed in his mind. $200,000 for Sophie's treatment. A chance at remission, at a normal childhood free from constant pain and hospital visits. I need to talk to my daughter, he said. Claire nodded. Take all the time you need. There's a private office through that door. Rebecca, Michael, give us the room. They left. Eli found Sophie sitting at the kitchen island, picking at a sandwich she'd made, her backpack still clutched beside her. She looked up when he entered, and he saw the fear in her eyes. Are we in trouble? She asked. Eli sat down beside her, trying to figure out how to explain adult complications to a 9-year-old. No, Peanut, we're not in trouble. But things are going to change. Because of yesterday. Because of yesterday, he agreed. That lady, Ms. Donovan, she wants to hire me. To keep her safe. It would mean good money, enough to help with your treatment. Sophie was quiet, processing. She was smart enough to understand that money was always tight, that her medication ate up most of what he earned, that they lived in a crappy apartment because that's what they could afford. Would we have to move? She asked. I don't know yet. Maybe. Probably. Would I have to change schools? Possibly. She looked down at her sandwich. I like my school. Mrs. Patterson is nice, and Jenny is my friend. Eli's heart broke a little. Sophie had so few constants in her life. Her school, her teacher, her one good friend, and now he might have to take even those away. I know, baby. I know this is hard, but this could help you get better, really better, not just managing the pain. There's a treatment, an experimental one, that could make the arthritis go away completely. Sophie looked up, hope warring with skepticism in her young eyes. Really? Really, but it's expensive. This job would pay for it. Then you should take it. Her voice was small but certain. I don't want to hurt all the time anymore, Dad, and I don't want you to have to work 2 jobs. You're always so tired. He pulled her into a hug, pressing his face into her hair so she wouldn't see his eyes water. 9 years old and already too wise, too understanding, too aware of the sacrifices he made. Okay, he whispered. Okay, we'll do it, but if anything feels wrong, if you're scared or uncomfortable, you tell me immediately. Deal? Deal. They went back to the main room. Claire was standing exactly where they'd left her, staring out at the city like she could find answers in the skyline. She turned when they entered. 6 months, Eli said. Contract work, not employment. I'm an independent contractor. Full medical for Sophie, non-negotiable. And I need 2 things in writing. First, if I determine the threat level is beyond my capability to handle alone, I bring in additional personnel of my choosing. Second, if at any point I decide Sophie's safety is compromised, I walk away with no penalties and no legal harassment. Claire nodded slowly. Rebecca can have contracts drafted by end of business today. What else? I need full access to your security protocols, personnel files, and schedule. I need to know everyone who has access to your location data and communications. And I need complete autonomy, no second-guessing my decisions on security matters. Done. What about living arrangements? Eli glanced at Sophie. We stay in our apartment. I'm not moving her into some fortress where she becomes a target by association. That's not practical if you're providing close protection. The commute alone creates vulnerabilities. Claire considered. I have a property in Greenwich, gated community, excellent schools, fully secured, guest house on the property. You and Sophie take the guest house, maintain your independence, but you're close enough to respond if needed. I need to see it first. We can go this afternoon. Claire looked at Sophie, her expression softening. Sophie, how would you feel about living somewhere with a pool and a yard? Maybe even a dog, if that's something you'd want. Sophie's eyes went wide. They'd never been able to afford a pet. Really? Really? I have a yellow lab named Cooper. He's very gentle and he loves kids. You'd have to help take care of him, of course. I can do that. Sophie's excitement was the first genuine happiness Eli had seen from her since yesterday's attack. Watching them talk, something shifted in Eli's chest. Claire Donovan, billionaire tech CEO, power player, someone who should have nothing in common with a 9-year-old sick kid, was treating Sophie like she mattered. Not like a charity case or a means to an end, but like an actual person worthy of consideration. Maybe this wouldn't be a disaster after all. The afternoon blurred into logistics. Rebecca produced contracts with impossible speed, probably had them drafted before Eli even agreed, which should have annoyed him but actually impressed him. Michael arranged transportation. Within 3 hours, they were in a convoy of vehicles heading to Greenwich, news vans following until Claire's security team lost them with a series of practiced maneuvers. The property was exactly what Claire had described. Sprawling estate behind walls and gates, main house that looked like it belonged in a magazine, and a guest house that was nicer than anywhere Eli had ever lived. 2 bedrooms, full kitchen, living room with furniture that didn't look like it had been rescued from a curb. Sophie ran from room to room, her backpack finally abandoned, examining everything with wide eyes. "This is ours?" she asked. "For now," Eli said. "Remember, 6 months." But already he could see her mentally arranging her stuffed animals, claiming the bedroom with the window seat, imagining a life that felt less like survival and more like living. Cooper the yellow lab found Sophie within minutes and decided she was his new favorite person. She laughed, actually laughed, when he licked her face, and Eli felt something in his chest that might have been hope. Claire gave them space to settle in, retreating to the main house with promises to send dinner over. Eli spent the time doing what he did best, assessing, planning, securing. He checked every window lock, tested every door, mapped sight lines and escape routes. Old habits. Necessary habits. His phone buzzed. Martinez, his old lieutenant, calling back. Eli stepped outside to answer. "Please tell me you didn't just sign your life away to a corporate CEO," Martinez said without preamble. "How did you—" "Because I've been watching the news and making calls. Eli, Cameron Steele is bad news. Really bad news. I made some inquiries after we talked. He's connected to some dark shit. Arms deals, information brokering, corporate espionage. If he's involved with Donovan's company, it's not for legitimate reasons." Eli's stomach dropped. "What kind of dark shit?" "The kind that gets Navy SEALs killed when they stumble onto it. The kind that involves classified information being sold to hostile nations. I can't give you specifics over the phone, but I'm telling you, Steele is dirty, and if he's interested in you, it's because you're useful to him somehow." "He said he knew my father." "Then your father was probably either working for him or trying to expose him. Either way, you need to be careful. This isn't just corporate drama, Eli. This is dangerous people playing dangerous games. You sure you want Sophie anywhere near this?" Eli looked back at the guest house, where Sophie was visible through the window playing with Cooper, the happiest he'd seen her in months. "I'm already committed," he said. "Signed contracts this afternoon." Martinez swore creatively. Okay, you're committed. Then you need backup. I'm going to make some calls, see who's available for private security work. Nobody comes near you or that kid without going through people we trust. Understood?" "Martinez, I can't afford—" "Not asking you to. I've got favors I can call in, brothers who owe me. You saved my ass in Kandahar. Time for me to return the favor." Martinez paused. "Besides, if Steele is involved, this might be bigger than just protecting one CEO. This might be about finishing what someone started 23 years ago when your father died." After they hung up, Eli stood in the gathering darkness, watching his daughter play with a dog she already loved in a house they didn't own, working for a woman he barely knew, caught in a web of conspiracy he didn't understand. But Sophie was laughing. For that sound alone, he'd walk into hell. The first week passed in a blur of routine establishment and constant vigilance. Eli threw himself into his new role with the same intensity he'd brought to SEAL training. He reviewed every member of Claire's security team, ran background checks on everyone with access to her schedule, and implemented new protocols that Claire's chief of security initially resisted until Eli demonstrated exactly how compromised their existing systems were by walking past 3 supposedly secure checkpoints without being stopped. Sophie started at her new school. Greenwich Academy, private, expensive, everything Eli had never been able to give her. She was nervous the first day, clutching Mr. Bear in the car, even though she was too old for stuffed animals in public. But when Eli picked her up that afternoon, she was smiling. "They have an art room, Dad, a whole room just for art, and the teacher said I'm really good at drawing." She showed him a sketch she'd made, a surprisingly detailed rendering of Cooper sleeping in the sun. The talent was all Emma. Her mother had been an artist before nursing school, before reality demanded more practical skills. "That's beautiful, Peanut. And there's a girl named Maya who has JIA too. She showed me her infusion port and we talked about our treatments, and it was nice to meet someone who understands." Sophie's voice got quieter. "Is it okay that I told her about being sick?" "Of course it's okay. You never have to hide who you are." But even as he said it, Eli was aware of the irony. He was hiding who he was, had been hiding for 3 years, was still hiding now, even as he played the role of security consultant. Because if people knew what he'd really done in the Navy, if they understood the things he was capable of, they'd look at him differently. Sophie would look at him differently. Claire kept her distance those first few days, letting them settle in. But on Friday evening, she knocked on the guest house door with a bottle of wine and a tentative smile. "I figured you might want company," she said. "Or I can leave if you'd rather. Come in." Eli stepped aside. Sophie was already asleep. Her medication made her tired in the evenings, so it was just the two of them in the small living room. Claire looked different outside of her power suits. Jeans, a simple sweater, hair down, more human. She curled up in the armchair while Eli poured wine, and for a moment they just sat in comfortable silence. "Thank you," she said finally, "for doing this, for uprooting your entire life because I have enemies. You're paying me well for it. It's more than that. You could have said no. Most people would have said no." She took a sip of wine. "Can I ask you something personal?" Eli's guard went up automatically, but he nodded. "Why did you really leave the Navy? Martinez, your old lieutenant, he wouldn't tell me details, but he said you were one of the best, rising star, leadership potential, the whole thing. Then you just walked away." Eli was quiet for a long moment, weighing how much to share. Emma was dying. Stage 4 cancer, maybe 6 months left. Sophie was 3 years old. I could either deploy to Afghanistan for 8 months, or I could be there for the end. That's not really a choice. But after Emma died, you could have gone back. Sophie was 3, traumatized, terrified I'd disappear like her mom did. I couldn't put her through that, couldn't risk her losing both parents. He met Claire's eyes. "Some things matter more than career." Claire looked down at her wine glass. "I've spent my entire adult life building a company, sacrificing relationships, free time, any semblance of normal life, all for Nexus Technologies. Sometimes I wonder what I've actually built. A platform for other people's connections while I sit alone in conference rooms making decisions that affect thousands of people I'll never meet." Regret? Perspective. She smiled sadly. "Watching you with Sophie this week, the way you are with her, the way she lights up when you're around, it makes me realize what I've missed, what I've traded away for market share and stock prices." "It's not too late," Eli said. "You're what, 34? 36. And yes, theoretically it's not too late. But when you've spent 15 years building walls, it's hard to remember how to let people in." She looked at him directly. "Is that what you're doing? Keeping walls up? Because I see the way you watch everyone like they're potential threats. The way you position yourself with your back to walls and your eyes on exits. You're here, but you're not really here. You're still in combat mode." Eli couldn't argue because she was right. Hard to turn it off. "Maybe you don't have to. Maybe the walls serve a purpose." Claire finished her wine. "But maybe it would be nice to have someone on the inside of them sometimes. Someone who understands." She left after that, and Eli sat alone in the dark, thinking about walls and isolation and the different ways people protected themselves from a world that could hurt them. The weekend brought Sophie's first scheduled treatment at the new hospital, Connecticut Children's, significantly nicer than the clinic they'd been using. Claire insisted on coming along, which surprised Eli until he realized she was nervous. Not about the threat level, his security assessment had determined the hospital visit was low risk, but about Sophie. The infusion took 3 hours. Sophie was a trooper about it like always, barely flinching when the nurse placed the IV. But Eli could see this pain in her eyes, the exhaustion that came with the medication entering her system. Claire sat with them the entire time, not on her phone, not distracted by work, just present. She asked Sophie about school, about her drawings, about what she wanted to be when she grew up. "A veterinarian," Sophie said, "so I can help animals feel better, like how the doctors help me feel better." "That's a wonderful goal," Claire said seriously. "You know, Nexus Technologies has a veterinary division. We develop software for animal hospitals. Maybe someday you could work there, combine your love of animals with technology." Sophie's eyes went wide. "Really? That's a real job?" "Absolutely. In fact, I'll introduce you to Dr. Martinez, no relation to your dad's friend, who runs that division. She started as a vet and then learned programming because she wanted to make better tools for animal care." Watching them talk, Eli felt something shift in his perception of Claire Donovan. She wasn't just playing nice for his benefit. She genuinely cared, saw Sophie as a person, not an obligation or a tool for keeping Eli compliant. That night, after Sophie was asleep and Eli was doing his evening perimeter check, his phone buzzed with a text from Claire. "Thank you for letting me come today. Sophie is remarkable. You've done an amazing job raising her." He stared at the message for a long time before responding. "Thank you for caring." 3 words. But they felt like dismantling a wall brick by brick. The following Tuesday, everything changed. Eli was reviewing security footage from the main house when he noticed something off. A delivery truck had arrived at the gate, been cleared by security, dropped off packages at the main entrance. Standard. Except the truck had idled at the end of the driveway for 47 seconds before leaving. No reason for that, no legitimate reason. He pulled up the gate camera footage, enhanced the image of the driver's face, ran it through facial recognition software he'd installed without telling anyone. The results made his blood run cold. Marcus Vance, former Army Ranger dishonorably discharged 8 years ago for conduct unbecoming. Currently on Interpol's watch list for suspected involvement in international arms trafficking. Known associate of several private military contractors who operated in legal gray zones. Not a delivery driver. A scout. Eli was moving before he'd consciously decided to act. He grabbed his go bag, checked his weapon. He'd been carrying concealed since day one, despite Connecticut's strict laws, and was out the door in 30 seconds. Claire was in her home office, working on her laptop. She looked up when Eli burst in, and immediately her expression shifted from surprise to alarm. "What's wrong?" "We're compromised. Someone just cased the property using a fake delivery service. We need to move now." "Move where? This is the most secure—" "Security is an illusion that just shattered. Pack a bag. 5 minutes." To her credit, Claire didn't argue further. She grabbed a laptop bag and some clothes while Eli called Martinez. "I need an extraction," Eli said without preamble. "Hostile surveillance confirmed. Need a safe house and transportation." "I'm 2 hours out. Can you hold position?" "Negative. Position is burned. I'm taking her to ground until you can get here." "Where's the kid?" Eli's heart stopped. "Sophie. She was at school. Greenwich Academy was a 30-minute drive in good traffic." "I need to get Sophie," he said. "Eli, if they're watching the property, they're watching the school. You go there, you lead them right to her." "I'm not leaving my daughter." "You're not. I've got a team 5 minutes from Greenwich Academy. Give me the word and they extract her, bring her to you." Eli's every instinct screamed against trusting anyone else with Sophie's safety. But Martinez was right. If he left now, he'd be followed. Would lead the threat directly to his daughter. "Do it," he said, voice tight. "But Martinez, if anything happens to her, it won't. I promise you, brother. We're ghosts. Nobody will even know she's gone." Eli gave him the school details, Sophie's class schedule, her description. Then he turned to Claire. "We need to leave separately. Make it look like normal routine. You're going to the Nexus office for a meeting. I'm going to check the perimeter. We'll rendezvous at—" He thought quickly. "The Starbucks on Post Road, 15 minutes. "What about Sophie?" She's being extracted by friendlies. She'll be safe. You're sure? No, he wasn't sure, but he nodded anyway. They left separately. Eli took the long way, checking for tails, running every counter-surveillance technique he'd learned. He spotted 2 separate vehicles following Claire's route, one sedan, one SUV. Professional, coordinated. He called her. Don't go to Starbucks, they're on you. Head toward I-95 North, take exit 9, there's a rest stop. I'll meet you there. How did you just drive? He lost his own tail by cutting through a construction site and doubling back. Made it to the rest stop 3 minutes before Claire. When she pulled in, he was already moving, opening her passenger door, sliding in. Drive, don't stop. Head toward Hartford. What's happening, Eli? Who's following us? People who want you dead, and people I thought were buried in my past. He checked his phone. Message from Martinez. Package secure. Heading to safe house. Give me a destination. Relief flooded through him. Sophie was safe. He texted back an address and a property Martinez had mentioned once. A cabin in the Berkshires that belonged to a retired SEAL. Off the grid. Secure. Claire was gripping the steering wheel tight enough to make her knuckles white. This is about your father, isn't it? About whatever he found 23 years ago. I think so. I think someone decided that loose ends need to be tied up. Your investigation into Nexus's original security architecture, my showing up at exactly the right moment to save you. Too many coincidences. Someone's worried about what we might uncover together. Steele, Claire said. It has to be Steele. He's the only one who knew about your father, who had access to my security protocols, who could have leaked my location to those kidnappers. Maybe. Or maybe Steele wants us to think he's the threat while the real enemy is someone we haven't even considered. Eli's mind was racing through possibilities, threat assessments, strategic options. Either way, we can't trust anyone inside Nexus. We can't trust local law enforcement. They might be compromised. We need to disappear until we figure out who's pulling the strings. I can't just disappear. I have a company to run. Responsibilities. You have a life to save. Priorities, Claire. She was quiet for a moment. Then, what about Sophie? Is she really safe? With Martinez and his team? Safer than she'd be anywhere else. He's pulling in people we served with. SEALs, Rangers, Marines. The best of the best. Nobody's getting to her. And if they try? Eli's voice went cold, flat, utterly certain. Then they'll learn why you don't threaten a SEAL's family. They drove in silence for a while, putting distance between themselves and Greenwich. Eli kept checking mirrors, watching for tails, his training running on autopilot while his mind worked through strategy. Finally, Claire spoke again. I need to tell you something. About Nexus. About the original security architecture you're supposed to be protecting. She took a breath. It was designed to be vulnerable. Deliberately. My father, Richard Donovan, he built back doors into the system. Ways to access supposedly secure data, to monitor communications, to extract information without leaving traces. He called it strategic flexibility. I called it corporate espionage when I found out about it 3 years ago. Eli's attention sharpened. You've known about this for 3 years? I've been trying to fix it for 3 years. Quietly, carefully, without alerting whoever he was working with. Because it wasn't just my father. Someone else had access to those back doors. Someone who's been using them to steal proprietary information from Nexus clients. I've been tracking the breaches, following the digital footprints, trying to identify the other party. And every trail led back to Cameron Steele. He was my father's partner, his oldest friend. They built Nexus together, and I think they built it specifically to facilitate corporate and government espionage. Your father must have figured it out, must have threatened to expose them. So they killed him. It wasn't a question. I can't prove it, but yes, I think so. And now I'm close to having the proof I need, close to being able to expose the whole operation. That's why someone wants me dead. That's why they sent professionals instead of just staging an accident. Eli's hands clenched. His father's death, not an accident. Murder. And the man who'd engineered it had smiled at him, shaken his hand, offered him a job. We're going to bury him, Eli said quietly. Steele. Whoever else is involved. We're going to expose everything, burn it all down, and make sure they never hurt anyone again. Claire glanced at him, something fierce and determined in her expression. I was hoping you'd say that. They reached the cabin 3 hours later. Martinez was waiting with Sophie, who ran to Eli the moment she saw him. He caught her, held her tight, breathing in the strawberry shampoo scent of her hair. I was scared, she whispered. These strange men came and said we had to leave, and I didn't know where you were. I know, Peanut, I'm sorry. But you're safe now, I promise. You're safe. Martinez approached, and Eli saw the rest of the team. 4 men he recognized from various deployments. Brothers, family, people who'd proven themselves in fire and blood. Perimeter is secure, Martinez reported. No tails, no surveillance. We're ghosts. How long can we stay here? Long as you need. Owners overseas for 6 months said we could use the place. It's got supplies, weapons, secure comms, everything we need to plan our next move. Eli nodded, grateful beyond words. Then he turned to Sophie. Peanut, I need you to be brave a little longer. We're going to stay here for a bit, like a camping trip. It's going to be different, and maybe a little scary, but Miss Claire and I need to figure some things out. Can you do that? Sophie looked at Claire, then back at Eli. Is Miss Claire in danger? Yes. Because of bad people? Yes. Sophie's jaw set in a way that reminded Eli painfully of Emma. Then we help her. That's what heroes do. And despite everything, the danger, the conspiracy, the impossible odds, Eli smiled. Because his daughter understood something fundamental. Some things were worth fighting for. Some people were worth protecting, even if it meant walking into darkness with no guarantee of coming out the other side. The cabin settled into an uneasy rhythm over the next 48 hours. Sophie adapted with the resilience of childhood, turning the rustic space into an adventure. She helped Martinez's team, Torres, Jackson, Kim, and Rodriguez, set up motion sensors around the perimeter, treating it like a game even as the men treated it like the tactical operation it was. Cooper had come with them, smuggled out in the chaos, and the dog's presence gave Sophie something normal to hold on to when everything else felt like quicksand. Eli watched her laugh at one of Torres's terrible jokes while they assembled a surveillance monitor, and felt his chest tighten. This wasn't the life he'd wanted for her. Hiding in a cabin in the Berkshires, surrounded by armed former special operators, running from threats she was too young to fully understand. But she was alive and safe, and that was all that mattered. Claire had taken over the cabin's small study, transforming it into a makeshift operations center. Her laptop sat open alongside 3 burner phones Martinez had provided, and she'd been working non-stop since they arrived. Eli found her there late on their second night, eyes bloodshot, fingers flying across the keyboard. You need to sleep, he said from the doorway. I need to find proof. Claire didn't look up. I've been going through archived server logs, looking for evidence of the backdoor access. It's all encrypted, buried under layers of legitimate traffic, but it's there. I can feel it. What exactly are you looking for? A pattern. The breaches happened at irregular intervals over 15 years, but they all share certain characteristics. Specific ports being accessed, data packets routed through the same offshore servers, timestamps that correspond to major corporate acquisitions or government contract negotiations. She finally met his eyes. Someone's been using Nexus infrastructure to steal trade secrets and classified information. They'd access our clients' data through the back doors my father built, extract what they needed, and sell it to the highest bidder. It's brilliant, really. Nexus provides the access, claims plausible deniability because technically our systems aren't compromised. They're working exactly as designed, and our clients never know their information was stolen until it's too late. And Steele was running this operation. I think so, but I can't prove it yet. The digital footprints are too carefully obscured. I need access to Nexus's original architecture documents, the ones my father kept in physical form, locked in a safe deposit box. If I can show that the back doors were intentionally designed, that they couldn't have been accidental vulnerabilities, then I can connect Steele to the breaches. Eli moved into the room, studying the screen over her shoulder. Code scrolled past, meaningless to him, but clearly significant to her. Where's this safe deposit box? Manhattan. Chase Bank on Fifth Avenue. I have a key, but accessing it means going back into the world. Means exposing ourselves. Then we plan it right. Quick in, quick out. Minimal exposure. Eli's tactical mind was already working through logistics. Martinez and his team can provide overwatch, establish security perimeters. We go in during business hours when the bank is crowded. Harder to make a move with that many witnesses. Two-person entry team, three-person backup, one on remote overwatch. Claire turned in her chair, looking up at him. You've done this before. Extractions in hostile territory. Different contexts, same principles. Identify the objective, assess the threats, establish multiple exit routes, maintain communication. He paused. But Claire, if we do this and Steele finds out, and he will find out, then there's no going back. Right now he might think we're just hiding, scared. The moment we make a move for those documents, we declare war. We're already at war. I've just been too cautious to admit it. She stood, and Eli was reminded again of how tall she was, how her presence commanded space without demanding it. Your father tried to expose this conspiracy 23 years ago, and they killed him for it. My father helped build it, and then spent the rest of his life profiting from it. I inherited his company, his reputation, his sins. Maybe it's time I did something to earn the name Donovan instead of just trading on it. There was something fierce in her expression, something that reminded Eli of the moment before insertion, when fear transformed into purpose. He recognized it because he'd felt it himself 1,000 times, the decision to stop running and start fighting. Okay, he said. Then we plan it for Friday, 3 days from now. That gives us time to scout the location, establish protocols, and make sure Sophie is secure here. I don't like leaving her. Neither do I. But Torres is former Delta Force, and Rodriguez did 3 tours in Afghanistan as a Marine raider. She'll be safer here with them than anywhere else. Eli moved to the window, checking the perimeter out of habit. Besides, Sophie understands more than we give her credit for. She knows this is important. As if summoned by her name, Sophie appeared in the doorway, Mr. Bear tucked under one arm and Cooper at her heels. Dad? Can Miss Claire read me a story? You always fall asleep in the middle. Eli felt his ears redden. I do not fall asleep. You snore. That's just heavy breathing. Sophie giggled, and Claire smiled, a real smile, not the corporate mask she usually wore. I'd love to read you a story, Sophie. What do you have? They settled in the cabin's main room, Sophie between them on the worn couch, and Claire read from a battered copy of The Secret Garden that she'd found on a bookshelf. Her voice was different when she read, softer, less controlled, almost vulnerable. She did voices for the characters, made Sophie laugh at Mary's stubbornness and smile at Dickens' kindness. Eli watched them and felt something dangerous stirring in his chest, something that felt like hope, like possibility, like the shape of a life he'd stopped letting himself imagine. Claire caught his eye over Sophie's head, and something passed between them, an understanding maybe, or a question neither was quite ready to ask. Sophie fell asleep halfway through a chapter, her head heavy on Claire's shoulder. They stayed frozen for a moment, neither wanting to disturb her, before Eli carefully lifted his daughter and carried her to the bedroom she'd claimed. He tucked her in, kissed her forehead, and returned to find Claire still on the couch, staring at the book in her hands. She's wonderful, Claire said quietly. Brave and smart and kind. You've raised an extraordinary person, Eli. I've tried. Most days I feel like I'm failing. You're not. Trust me. I know what failure looks like in parenting. My father was brilliant and successful and completely absent. He gave me every material advantage and no emotional support. The day I took over Nexus, the day I should have been celebrating the culmination of everything I'd worked for, all I could think was that he would have found some way to criticize my performance. Even dead, his judgment hung over me. Is that why you're doing this? To prove something to him? Claire considered the question seriously. Maybe at first, but now. Now I'm doing it because it's right, because people were hurt by what my father built, and I have the power to stop it. Your father understood that. He chose to do the right thing even knowing it might cost him everything. I want to honor that choice. Eli sat down beside her, closer than strictly necessary, drawn by something he couldn't quite name. My father was a good man who made hard choices, but he was also absent a lot, distracted by work, focused on problems I couldn't understand. When he died, I was angry at him for years, angry that he'd kept secrets, that he'd taken risks, that he'd left my mother and me alone. He paused, remembering. It took me a long time to realize that he did what he thought was right, And sometimes doing the right thing means sacrificing your own peace for someone else's safety. Like you did, leaving the Navy for Sophie, like I did. They sat in comfortable silence, shoulders touching, watching the fire Martinez had built earlier burn down to embers. Outside, night sounds filtered through the walls: crickets, an owl, the distant rustle of wind through trees. Normal sounds. Peaceful sounds. The kind of sounds that made it easy to forget they were hiding from people who wanted them dead. "Eli," Claire said finally, her voice hesitant, "when this is over, if we survive this, what happens next? Do you go back to your apartment, your 2 jobs, your old life? Do we just pretend this never happened? I don't know. I haven't thought past keeping you and Sophie alive. Think about it now, please." He turned to look at her, really look at her, and saw vulnerability beneath the competence, saw loneliness that mirrored his own, saw a woman who'd built walls as high as his, who understood isolation and duty and the weight of impossible choices. "I think," he said carefully, "that I've spent 3 years convinced I didn't deserve anything beyond survival, didn't deserve happiness or connection or anything that looked like a normal life. Because I'd done things, seen things, been things that felt incompatible with peace. But watching Sophie with you, seeing the way you care about her, about us, it makes me wonder if maybe I was wrong. Maybe there's a version of life where I'm not just surviving. Where we're not just surviving." Claire's hand found his, fingers intertwining. "I'd like to explore that version. After. When we're not running for our lives." "Yeah," Eli said, squeezing her hand. "Me too." They stayed like that until the fire died completely, holding on to each other in the darkness, finding comfort in presence and touch, and the promise of maybe. The next morning brought complications. Martinez pulled Eli aside after breakfast, his expression grim. "We've got a problem. One of my contacts at FBI reached out. They're asking questions about you. Specifically, they're asking if you're involved in domestic terrorism." Eli felt his blood turn to ice. "What?" "Someone fed them a story, said you're a disgruntled ex-SEAL who's kidnapped a corporate executive and gone off the grid. They're claiming Claire Donovan is being held against her will, that you're dangerous, that you need to be apprehended before you hurt someone." "That's insane. Claire came with me voluntarily. She's the one being targeted." "I know that, you know that, but FBI doesn't know that. They've got APBs out on your vehicle, your photo is being circulated to law enforcement, and they're treating this as a potential hostage situation." Martinez handed him a tablet showing a news website. The headline read, "Tech CEO Missing After Diner. Hero Turns Dangerous." The article spun an elaborate fiction. Eli Turner, traumatized veteran, becomes obsessed with the woman he saved, kidnaps her from her home, disappears into the wilderness. Anonymous sources claimed he'd been unstable since leaving the Navy, that his daughter was being used as leverage to ensure Claire's compliance, that authorities feared for her safety. It was masterful character assassination. Every true fact twisted just enough to support the false narrative. His SEAL background became evidence of violent tendencies. His protective actions at the diner became obsessive fixation. Even Sophie's illness was weaponized, portrayed as a motive for extortion. "Steele," Eli said flatly. "This is Steele. He's using law enforcement to hunt us, making us the criminals so we can't go to the authorities for help." "That's what I figured, which means our timeline just accelerated. You go into Manhattan now, every cop in the city is looking for you. You'll be spotted, detained, separated from Claire, and then—" Martinez trailed off, but the implication was clear, and then Steele would have Claire vulnerable and Eli in custody, unable to protect anyone. Claire emerged from the study, laptop in hand, having clearly overheard. "We can fight this. I can put out a statement, do a video call with media, prove I'm here voluntarily. Which tells Steele exactly where we are and confirms we're working together," Eli countered. "The moment you surface, he'll know we're onto him. He'll destroy evidence, disappear assets, and we'll never prove anything. So we're trapped. We can't move forward without exposing ourselves, but we can't stay hidden because law enforcement is actively hunting us." Eli's mind raced through tactical options, discarding each as quickly as it formed. They needed those documents from the safe deposit box, needed the proof that would exonerate Claire and expose Steele's conspiracy. But accessing them now meant walking into what was essentially a trap. Unless. What if I don't go? Eli said slowly. What if Claire goes alone, with someone who isn't a wanted fugitive providing security? You want to send her into danger without you? I want to send her into danger with someone Steele doesn't know about. Someone who can move invisibly because they're not on anyone's radar. Eli turned to Martinez. You still have contacts in the private security sector? Someone good? Someone we can trust absolutely? Martinez considered. Maybe. There's a woman, Kayla Chen, former Secret Service. She left the agency last year, started doing independent close protection work. Discreet, professional, and clean. No connection to any of us that Steele could trace. Can you reach her? Probably. But Eli, you sure about this? Letting Claire go without you? Every instinct screamed no. Screamed to stay close, to be the wall between Claire and danger, to control every variable personally. But strategy demanded sacrifice, demanded trust. No, Eli admitted. I'm not sure. But it's the smart play. I stay here with Sophie, visible if anyone's tracking us. Claire goes dark with new security, makes the bank run, and extracts the documents. We're splitting Steele's attention, forcing him to cover multiple angles. Claire was shaking her head before he finished. I don't like it. What if something goes wrong? What if Steele has people watching the bank? Then Kayla Chen gets you out. That's her job. And you'll have Martinez's team providing remote overwatch, cameras, communications, backup plans. Eli moved closer to her, voice low. I don't like it either. But our options are limited and getting worse. This gives us the best chance of success. She held his gaze for a long moment, and Eli saw the fear there, carefully controlled but present. Saw her weighing risks and odds and terrible possibilities. Saw her make the same decision he'd made 1,000 times in combat, to do the necessary thing despite the cost. Okay, she said. Call this Kayla Chen. Set it up. Martinez made the call. Within 3 hours, Kayla Chen arrived at the cabin. A compact woman in her early 40s with observant eyes and the kind of relaxed readiness that marked elite training. She assessed the situation quickly, asked sharp questions, and laid out a plan that Eli had to admit was solid. We go in Thursday morning, early. Less traffic, fewer civilians, better sight lines. I'll be dressed as Claire's assistant, professional but forgettable. We enter the bank at opening, access the safe deposit box, extract the documents, and exit within 15 minutes. I'll have 3 escape routes planned, a vehicle staged 2 blocks away, and a safe house in Queens where we can review the documents before deciding next moves. What about surveillance? Eli asked. If Steele's watching the bank, then we deal with it. I've run protective details in war zones and corporate espionage cases. This is well within my capability. Kayla's expression was calm, confident. Ms. Donovan will be safe. You have my word. Eli wanted to argue, to insist on going himself, to not trust Sophie and Claire's safety to anyone else. But Martinez caught his eye and gave a small shake of his head. Stand down. Trust the professional. Okay, Eli said, the word tasting like defeat. Thursday morning. But I want live communication the entire time. Body camera, open comms channel, GPS tracking, non-negotiable. Done. Kayla extended her hand. I'll keep her safe, Turner. I promise. They shook, and Eli felt the weight of that promise settle over him like armor. He'd spent 6 years learning to work with teams, to trust his brothers in arms, to understand that no one person could control every outcome. This was the same principle. Trust the team, trust the plan. But God, it was hard. The next 36 hours crawled past with agonizing slowness. Eli ran through every scenario he could imagine, gaming out responses and contingencies. Martinez and his team prepped equipment, communications gear, surveillance tech, backup weapons. Sophie seemed to sense the tension and stayed close to Eli, quieter than usual, drawing elaborate pictures of Cooper chasing butterflies that she presented to Claire like peace offerings. Claire spent hours reviewing the plan with Kayla, memorizing routes and protocols. In the evenings, she'd sit with Sophie, reading more chapters of The Secret Garden, her voice steady, despite the fear Eli knew she must be feeling. Watching them together, his daughter and this woman who'd become something more than employer or client, Eli felt his carefully maintained emotional distance crumbling. On Wednesday night, after Sophie was asleep, Claire found him on the cabin's porch. He'd been staring into darkness, running threat assessments on an endless loop, when she sat down beside him. "Can't sleep?" she asked. "Haven't slept properly in 3 days. Join the club." She was quiet for a moment. "Eli, I need to tell you something before tomorrow. In case—" Don't say in case. We plan for success, not failure. But if something does go wrong, I need you to know." She turned to face him, and in the moonlight her face was pale but determined. "These past 2 weeks, living here, being with you and Sophie, it's been the most real my life has felt in years, maybe ever. I've spent so long being Claire Donovan, CEO, always performing, always calculating, never just being. But with you, I don't have to perform. You see me, the scared, uncertain, lonely person underneath the corporate armor, and somehow you don't find that disappointing." Eli's throat tightened. "How could I? You're one of the bravest people I've ever met. You're fighting a war against an enemy who's already tried to kill you twice, and you're doing it because it's right. Not for profit or glory, but because someone needs to stop him. That's not disappointing. That's extraordinary." "I'm terrified," she admitted. "Of tomorrow, of steel, of failing, of losing this, whatever this is between us, before I even fully understand what it could be." Eli reached for her hand, the gesture feeling both natural and monumental. "Then we make sure you come back. We follow the plan, trust Kayla, and when it's done, when we have the proof and steel is buried, we figure out what this is. Together." "Together," Claire echoed. Then before Eli could process what was happening, she leaned in and kissed him. It was soft, tentative, a question more than a statement. Eli's first instinct was to pull back, to maintain professional boundaries, to not complicate an already impossible situation. But his second instinct, the one that had been growing stronger every day he spent with Claire, every evening reading to Sophie, every moment that felt like building something instead of just surviving, that instinct won. He kissed her back. It lasted maybe 10 seconds. But in those seconds, Eli felt possibility unfold like a map, a future that included more than missions and threats and constant vigilance, a future that looked like the life Emma would have wanted for him: connection, partnership, love. When they pulled apart, Claire was smiling. "I've wanted to do that for days." "Yeah?" "Yeah. You're kind of irresistible when you're being all protective and tactical. It's very distracting during operational planning." Eli laughed, surprised by the sound. "I'll try to be less tactical." "Please don't. I like you tactical." She squeezed his hand. "Come back to bed. Even if we can't sleep, we can at least rest." They went inside together, fingers intertwined, and settled on the couch. Claire curled against his side, her head on his shoulder, and Eli wrapped his arm around her. They stayed like that through the night, not sleeping but not alone, finding comfort in presence. Thursday morning arrived too quickly. Kayla and Claire left before dawn, outfitted with comms gear and GPS trackers, armed with the plan they'd rehearsed a dozen times. Martinez established overwatch from the cabin, multiple screens showing traffic cameras and building surveillance near the Manhattan Bank. Torres and Kim took positions in Queens, ready to provide backup if needed. Rodriguez stayed with Eli and Sophie, maintaining perimeter security. "She'll be fine," Rodriguez said, watching Eli pace. "Chen's the best. I've seen her work." Eli nodded but couldn't stop moving, couldn't stop checking his phone, monitoring the GPS tracker, listening to the open comms channel where Kayla provided updates in clipped professional tones. "Entering vehicle. ETA to Manhattan, 90 minutes. Crossing GW Bridge. Traffic normal. No tails detected. Approaching Fifth Avenue. Banking district is crowded. Good civilian cover?" Sophie watched him pace, finally putting down her colored pencils. "Dad? Is Miss Claire going to be okay?" Eli forced himself to stop, to project calm he didn't feel. "Yes, Peanut. She's with professionals. She's going to be fine." "But you're worried." "I'm always worried. That's my job." Sophie considered this seriously. "Miss Claire likes you, I can tell. She smiles different when you're around." "Oh, really? And how does she smile?" "Like she's happy, but also kind of scared. Like when you smile at me when I'm getting my treatments, you want me to think everything's okay, but you're actually really worried. Sophie's two old eyes fixed on him. You like her too, don't you? Eli sat down beside his daughter, abandoning the pretense of adult emotional opacity. Yeah, Peanut, I do. Good. She's nice, and she makes you less sad. I'm not sad. You've been sad since Mom died. You try to hide it, but I know. Sometimes I hear you at night when you think I'm asleep and you sound sad. Sophie leaned against him. But lately you sound less sad because of Miss Claire. Eli pulled her close, marveling at how perceptive she was, how much she understood despite his attempts to shield her. You're too smart for your own good. I know. It's a gift and a curse. He laughed, kissed the top of her head, and was about to respond when Kayla's voice crackled through the comms. Entering bank. Subject is calm. Beginning approach to safe deposit access. Martinez's voice from his station. Copy that. Cameras show clear interior. 3 tellers, 1 guard, maybe a dozen customers. No obvious threats. Eli listened to the background sounds, footsteps on marble, muffled conversations, the electronic beep of security doors. His imagination filled in the details. Claire walking beside Kayla, probably nervous but hiding it. The weight of the key in her pocket. The knowledge that the next 15 minutes would determine everything. Accessing safe deposit vault, Kayla reported. Subject is retrieving contents. A pause. Eli's heart hammered. Content secured. Exiting vault. Making our way to... Wait! Eli was on his feet instantly. Wait, what? Kayla, report. Multiple hostiles entering bank. 4 men, armed, moving with purpose. They're looking for her. Abort, abort, taking evasive... Gunfire, screaming. The comm channel erupted in chaos. Kayla! Eli shouted. Kayla! Respond! Static. Then Claire's voice, breathless and terrified. Eli, they found us. Kayla's down. I'm in the vault, but they're coming. I can hear them. Claire, listen to me. How many hostiles? 4, maybe 5. They have guns. They're checking the vault rooms one by one. Martinez was already moving, barking orders. Torres, Kim, get to that bank, now. Rodriguez, prep for immediate extraction. Turner... But Eli wasn't listening anymore. He was looking at Rodriguez. Keys, vehicle, now. Turner, you can't. You're wanted. You go into Manhattan, you'll be arrested on sight. Then I get arrested. Give me the keys. Eli... Martinez tried. She's going to die if I don't go. Now give me the goddamn keys. Rodriguez threw him the keys. Eli was moving before they hit his palm, out the door, into the vehicle. Sophie was shouting his name, but he couldn't stop, couldn't think, could only drive. He made the 90-minute drive in 53 minutes, pushing the vehicle past safe speeds, running lights, not caring about law enforcement or traffic or anything except getting to Claire. Martinez's voice in his ear, providing updates. Torres and Kim were 15 minutes out. Police were responding to the bank shooting but trapped outside by armed men who'd barricaded the entrance. Hostage situation, active shooter protocol. SWAT was being called, which meant time. Precious time Claire didn't have. Claire, Eli said into the comm, praying she could still hear him. Claire, talk to me. I'm here. Her voice was barely a whisper. I'm hiding in one of the deposit rooms. But Eli, they're going room by room. They're going to find me. No, they're not, because I'm 2 minutes out. You hear me? 2 minutes. Hold on. You can't come here. You'll be arrested. Steele will win. I don't care about Steele. I care about you. 2 minutes. He skidded to a stop 3 blocks from the bank, as close as police barricades would allow, abandoned the vehicle and moved on foot, using every bit of training to navigate the chaos. Cops everywhere, civilians being evacuated, news helicopters overhead. No way to enter the front. But buildings in Manhattan shared infrastructure, steam tunnels, maintenance access, basement connections. Eli found a subway grate, pried it open with his knife, dropped into darkness. Martinez, I need building schematics. Basement access to Chase Bank on 5th Avenue. On it. Sending to your phone. The schematic appeared. Eli studied it while running through tunnels, mapping his route. There. A maintenance corridor that connected to the bank's sub-basement. Probably alarmed, definitely locked, but that was a problem for when he got there. He emerged in a boiler room, picked the lock on the access door in 6 seconds, and found himself in the bank's basement. Above him, he could hear shouting, the distinctive sound of boots on marble, someone crying. The vault was 1 floor up. Eli found a service stairwell, moved up silently, cracked the door and assessed. 4 men, just like Claire had said, all armed with military-grade weapons, all professionals. They'd secured the exits, were systematically searching each vault room, working toward Claire's position, and they were expecting security forces at the doors, not a threat from inside. Eli moved like smoke. The first hostile died without knowing he was there. Silent takedown, hand over mouth, knife between ribs. Eli lowered the body quietly, took his weapon, moved to the next position. The second hostile turned at the last second, got his mouth open to shout. Eli was faster. Double tap to center mass, catching the falling body before it could make noise. 2 down, 2 to go. But the sound of suppressed gunfire had alerted the others. They were moving, coordinating, bringing weapons up. Eli didn't give them time to organize. He came around the corner fast, weapon up, dropping the third hostile with a headshot before the man could acquire his target. The fourth hostile got a shot off, round punch through Eli's shoulder, white-hot agony, but Eli's return fire was accurate despite the pain. The hostile went down hard. Silence crashed over the vault. "Claire!" Eli called, moving through the rooms. "Claire, it's me, it's safe." A door cracked open. Claire emerged, pale and shaking, clutching a leather portfolio to her chest. When she saw him, something in her expression broke. She ran to him, colliding with his chest, and he caught her with his good arm. "You came," she whispered. "You actually came." "Always," Eli said simply. "Did you get the documents?" She held up the portfolio. "Everything. All the proof we need." "Then let's get out of here before— NYPD, drop your weapons!" Police flooded into the vault, weapons trained, shouting commands. Eli carefully set his weapon down, raised his hands, wincing as his injured shoulder screamed protest. "I'm Eli Turner. I'm unarmed now. The woman with me is Claire Donovan. She's the victim here, not a hostage. The 4 men down are the shooters. Check their weapons, their IDs. They're professionals." The officers were professional too, separating them, securing the scene, but one detective, older, sharp-eyed, looked at the downed hostiles, at Eli's precise takedowns, and his expression shifted from suspicion to understanding. "You're the SEAL," he said, "the one from the diner." "Former SEAL, and yes. FBI's looking for you, says you kidnapped Ms. Donovan." "That's a lie being spread by the person who hired these men to kill her." Eli met the detective's eyes. "She has proof. Documents that expose a corporate espionage ring. That's why they tried to kill her. That's why I came to stop them." The detective looked at Claire. "Ms. Donovan? Is this accurate?" "Every word." Claire clutched the portfolio tighter. "And I need to speak with the FBI immediately. Not local agents, someone high up, someone who can't be compromised. This goes all the way to the top of Nexus Technologies." The detective studied them both, making calculations. Then he nodded. "Let's get you both out of here. Medic needs to look at that shoulder, Turner. And Ms. Donovan, I'll make some calls. But you're both going to have a lot of explaining to do." They were escorted out through a side entrance, away from the media circus at the front. Eli caught a glimpse of news cameras, reporters, the chaos of a major incident. But more importantly, he saw Torres and Kim in the crowd, saw them nod, back up, ready if needed. In the ambulance, while a paramedic worked on his shoulder, Claire sat beside him, still holding the portfolio like a lifeline. "You got shot," she said, voice unsteady. "I've had worse." "That's not comforting. Wasn't meant to be." Eli managed to smile despite the pain. "You okay?" "I'm alive because of you, again. Starting to make a habit of it. Please keep making that habit." Her hand found his uninjured one, and they held on tight while the ambulance raced toward the hospital, while police secured the scene, while somewhere in the chaos of Manhattan, Cameron Steele realized his careful plans had just detonated in his face. The hospital room smelled like antiseptic and old coffee. Eli sat on the edge of the bed, his shoulder wrapped in clean bandages, while an FBI agent he didn't trust stood by the door, and another one he trusted even less asked questions he'd already answered twice. Claire was in a different room giving her own statement, separated from him by protocol and suspicion, and every minute they were apart felt like exposure, like vulnerability. "Let's go through it again," Agent Reeves said, his tone suggesting he had all day and no patience. "You claim you weren't holding Ms. Donovan against her will." "I don't claim anything. I'm telling you facts. She came with me voluntarily because someone inside her company tried to have her killed. We went into hiding while we gathered evidence to expose the conspiracy." Eli kept his voice level, professional. Getting angry would only reinforce whatever narrative they'd been fed about unstable veterans. "Evidence, you say, is in documents Ms. Donovan retrieved from a safe deposit box." "Correct." "Documents she was retrieving when 4 armed men attacked the bank." "Also correct." "And you just happened to arrive at exactly the right moment to save her. Again." Reeves's skepticism was thick enough to cut. "That's quite a coincidence, Mr. Turner. I was monitoring her location via GPS tracker. When the attack happened, I responded. That's not coincidence. That's security protocol. Security protocol that resulted in 4 dead men. 4 dead men who were actively trying to murder my client. I neutralized the threat using appropriate force. Check their backgrounds. They're all private military contractors with histories of illegal activity. Check their weapons. All unregistered, all traceable to black market suppliers. Check their phones. You'll find communication with handlers who hired them specifically to kill Claire Donovan." Reeves studied him with the expression of someone trying to decide if Eli was a hero or a problem. "The story you're selling is that Cameron Steele, respected businessman, longtime Nexus board member, is running an international espionage ring using corporate infrastructure." "I'm not selling anything. I'm reporting facts. Claire has the documentation to prove it." "Documentation we haven't seen yet. Documentation that might not exist. Documentation that convenient—" The door opened. A woman in her 50s walked in, carrying herself with the kind of authority that made everyone else in the room straighten unconsciously. She wore a dark suit, FBI credentials on her belt, and an expression that suggested she'd heard enough nonsense for one day. "Agent Reeves, you're dismissed," she said. "Not a request." Reeves opened his mouth to protest, saw her face, and wisely chose to leave. The woman waited until the door closed before turning to Eli. "I'm Assistant Director Sarah Chen. I've been briefed on the situation by Detective Morrison. We worked together years ago, and he vouched for your character. I've also spoken with Ms. Donovan and reviewed the documents she provided." She pulled up a chair, sat down like they were having coffee rather than a federal interview. "Mr. Turner, I'm going to be direct with you. If what you're claiming is true, this is one of the largest corporate espionage cases in U.S. history. It implicates major defense contractors, government officials, and corporate executives who thought they were untouchable. The kind of case that makes careers or destroys them. And if it's not true, then you're a domestic terrorist who murdered 4 men and fed my agency an elaborate story to cover it up." She met his eyes. "So help me understand which version is accurate. Convince me." Eli had been interrogated by professionals before, had been trained to resist, to deflect, to give nothing useful. But this wasn't an interrogation. This was an opportunity. And sometimes the best tactic was absolute honesty. "My father was Robert Turner. He worked for Nexus Technologies 23 years ago as a network security architect. He discovered that the company's infrastructure had deliberately designed vulnerabilities, backdoors, that allowed unauthorized access to client data. When he tried to expose this, he died in what was ruled an accident. Single car collision, no witnesses, case closed." Chen's expression didn't change, but something shifted in her eyes. "Go on." "Fast forward to 2 weeks ago. I saved Claire Donovan's life at a diner. Turns out she's the CEO of Nexus, and she's been investigating the same vulnerabilities my father found. Someone inside her company leaked her location to a professional hit team. She survived. We went into hiding while she gathered proof. That proof is in the document she retrieved today. Original architecture schematics showing the backdoors were intentional, server logs showing years of unauthorized access, financial records connecting those accesses to Cameron Steele. Why should I believe Cameron Steele is capable of this? Because he knew my father. Because he was my father's partner when those backdoors were designed. Because he's the only person who had motive, means, and opportunity to orchestrate both my father's death and the attempts on Claire's life. Eli leaned forward despite the pain in his shoulder. And because if you dig into Steele's background, really dig, beyond the corporate veneer, you'll find connections to arms dealers, information brokers, and offshore accounts that don't match his legitimate income. Chen was quiet for a long moment. You know what happens if you're wrong? If we investigate based on your claims and find nothing? Then I face consequences, but I'm not wrong. You seem very certain. I am. Because my father died trying to expose this. Because Claire nearly died twice. Because whoever's running this operation is desperate enough to send hit teams into public spaces and frame federal fugitives. That's not the behavior of innocent men, Assistant Director. That's the behavior of people who know their empire is crumbling. Chen stood, paced to the window, looked out at the Manhattan skyline. I'm going to tell you something off the record. 3 months ago, we opened an investigation into potential espionage at several major defense contractors. Classified information was being leaked to foreign buyers. Nothing immediately catastrophic, but enough to compromise operational security. We couldn't trace the source. Every digital trail hit a dead end at supposedly secure corporate servers. She turned back to face him. If what you're saying is true, if Nexus infrastructure was the vector for those leaks, it would explain everything we couldn't figure out. Eli felt pieces clicking into place. Steele wasn't just selling corporate secrets, he was selling government intelligence. Which makes this a matter of national security. Which means I can bring resources to bear that local law enforcement can't. Which means, she said deliberately, that if you're telling the truth, Cameron Steele's life is about to become very complicated. And if I'm lying? Then your life is about to become very complicated, but somehow I don't think you are. Chen moved toward the door. Stay here. Don't leave this room. Don't talk to anyone except Ms. Donovan when I bring her in. I'm going to make some calls. If the documents support your story, and Morrison says they will, then we move fast. Steele doesn't know we have the evidence yet. That gives us a narrow window to gather him before he runs. She left. Eli sat alone with his thoughts and his injuries, feeling the weight of the moment settle over him. They were either about to take down a conspiracy that had been running for 2 decades, or they were about to be buried under the weight of their own accusations. No middle ground, no safe option. 20 minutes later, Chen returned with Claire. She looked exhausted, pale, but her eyes found Eli's immediately, and some of the tension in his chest eased. She was okay. They were both okay. The documents check out, Chen said without preamble. My tech team has been reviewing the server logs, and they match known breach patterns we've been investigating. The financial records show Steele receiving payments through shell corporations that correspond with major intelligence leaks. And the architecture schematics prove the vulnerabilities were designed, not accidental. She paused. This is real. This is prosecutable. And we need your help to finish it. What kind of help? Eli asked. Steele doesn't know we have this evidence yet. He thinks the bank attack either succeeded or at least destroyed the documents. He's probably making arrangements to disappear, moving money, erasing records, establishing an exit strategy. We need to stop him before he runs. And we need both of you to help us do it. Claire spoke for the first time since entering the room. What are you suggesting? Steele will want to confirm you're dead or the documents are destroyed. He'll reach out to his people, ask for verification. When he doesn't get it, he'll escalate. Try to find you. Finish what he started. Chen looked between them. We use that. We let him think you're vulnerable, draw him out, catch him in the act. Then we have attempted murder on top of espionage. And we can grab him before he disappears. You want to use Claire as bait, Eli said, his voice going flat and dangerous. I want to use both of you as bait. Controlled environment, full tactical support, 0 actual risk. We set the trap, Steele walks into it, we close the door. There's always risk. You can't guarantee 0. No, Chen admitted. But I can guarantee that if we don't do this, Steele vanishes. He's got resources, connections, exit strategies we probably haven't even identified. The moment he realizes we're onto him, he's gone. This is our one chance to end this definitively. Eli looked at Claire. She looked back, and something passed between them, the same understanding they'd developed over 2 weeks of running and hiding and learning to trust each other. She was asking his opinion, trusting his tactical assessment, but ultimately this was her choice. "What do you think?" Claire asked him. "I think it's risky. I think Steele is smart and ruthless, and he's been running this operation for 23 years without getting caught. I think putting you in his crosshairs again is dangerous." Eli paused. "But I also think Chen is right. This might be our only shot at stopping him before he disappears. And if we don't take it, he wins. He keeps operating, keeps selling secrets, keeps hurting people. And my father's death was for nothing." "Your father's death wasn't for nothing," Claire said firmly. "It led to this moment, to us having the evidence to stop Steele, to finally getting justice." She turned to Chen. "What's the plan?" Chen pulled out a tablet, brought up building schematics. "Steele owns a private facility in Westchester, officially a data center for Nexus, but our surveillance suggests he uses it for off-books operations. Isolated location, private security, perfect place to interrogate someone without witnesses. We leak information that you're alive and hiding there. Steele comes to finish the job personally. He won't trust anyone else at this point. We have agents positioned, recording everything, and we grab him the moment he makes a move." "What about his security team?" Eli asked, studying the schematics. "If this is his base of operations, it'll be defended." "We handle them. FBI tactical teams will secure the perimeter, neutralize any resistance, and ensure you're protected." Chen looked at him directly. "I know you don't trust easily, Mr. Turner. I know you've spent 3 years staying off the grid specifically to avoid situations like this. But I'm asking you to trust me now. Trust my team. Let us help you finish this." Eli wanted to say no, wanted to grab Claire and Sophie and disappear so completely that no one would ever find them. But he thought about his father, about the secrets that had gotten him killed, about 23 years of injustice. Thought about Claire, who'd risked everything to expose the truth. Thought about Sophie, who deserved to grow up in a world where doing the right thing mattered. "When?" he asked. "Tomorrow night. We need time to position assets, brief tactical teams, establish communication protocols. And we need to make the leak look authentic. Can't just announce you're there, has to come through channel Steele monitors." Chen's expression was all business now. "You'll be moved to a safe house tonight, both of you, plus your daughter. Full protection, full support. Tomorrow, we end this. And if something goes wrong," Claire's voice was steady, but Eli heard the fear underneath, "then you'll have the best trained tactical operators in the country, between you and danger. And you'll have Mr. Turner, who's already proven multiple times that he's very good at keeping you alive." Chen stood. "Get some rest. Tomorrow is going to be a long day." After she left, Eli and Claire sat together in the hospital room, not speaking, just being present. Finally, Claire reached for his hand. "I'm scared," she admitted. "Good. Fear keeps you sharp. Is that what they taught you in the Navy? Embrace the fear?" "They taught me to acknowledge it, use it, never let it control me. Fear tells you something's dangerous. What you do with that information is what matters." Eli squeezed her hand. "We've come this far. We've survived everything Steele threw at us. Tomorrow we finish it. And then? Then we figure out what comes after. Together, like we said." Claire smiled, tired but genuine. "I'm holding you to that." They were moved to a safe house in Queens that night, a nondescript townhouse that looked like every other building on the block, but had reinforced walls, surveillance equipment, and enough firepower to hold off a small army. Sophie was already there, brought by Martinez and his team, and she ran to Eli the moment she saw him. "You got hurt," she said, staring at his bandaged shoulder with wide eyes. "Just a scratch, Peanut. I'm fine." "That's not a scratch. Scratches are little. That's big." "Okay, it's a medium-sized scratch, but I'm still fine, promise." He hugged her carefully, mindful of his injury, and felt her relax against him. "Were you good for Martinez and the team?" "I was excellent. Rodriguez taught me how to play poker, and I won $7. He says I have a gift for reading people." Eli caught Martinez's eye over Sophie's head and saw his old lieutenant grinning. "Great. My 9-year-old is a card shark now." "Life skills," Martinez said unrepentantly. "So, heard you had an exciting afternoon. Took down 4 hostiles with a shoulder wound. Showing off?" "Compensating for your team being slow." "We were 15 minutes out. You were being impatient." Claire was in danger. Impatient doesn't cover it. Martinez's expression turned serious. You did good, brother. Kept her alive, got the evidence, survived to fight another day. Emma would be proud. The mention of his late wife hit Eli harder than expected. He hadn't thought about what Emma would think of all this, the danger, the choices, the complicated feelings he was developing for Claire. Would she approve? Would she understand? Yeah, he said quietly. I think she would. The safe house had 3 bedrooms. Sophie claimed the smallest one, declaring it perfect for her and Mr. Bear. Claire took the second. Eli was supposed to take the third, but found himself too wired to sleep, so he sat in the kitchen nursing coffee and reviewing the plans for tomorrow's operation. Claire found him there after midnight, wrapped in a borrowed bathrobe, hair damp from a shower. Can't sleep either? She asked. Too much adrenaline still in my system. Give it a few more hours. She poured her own coffee, sat across from him at the small table. I've been thinking about what happens after tomorrow. Assuming we survive, assuming Steele is arrested, assuming everything goes according to plan. That's a lot of assuming. Humor me. What do you want your life to look like? When this is over and you're not running or hiding or protecting me from assassins? Eli considered the question seriously. 2 weeks ago, he would have said he just wanted to go back to his quiet life, working his jobs, raising Sophie, staying invisible. But that life felt impossibly small now, like trying to fit back into clothes he'd outgrown. I want Sophie healthy, he said finally. The experimental treatment, the one that could put her into remission. I want her to have a childhood without pain, without constant hospital visits. I want her to just be a kid. That's what you want for her. What about you? I want... Eli trailed off, surprised by how difficult the question was. I want to matter. Not in the way I mattered in the Navy, not through violence or combat, but through making a difference, helping people who need it, using my skills for something beyond survival. Nexus could use someone like you, Claire said carefully. Head of security, complete overhaul of our protocols, building something legitimate instead of the compromised mess my father left. It would be high-profile, well-paid, meaningful work. That's a job offer? It's a possibility, something to think about. She paused. And selfishly, I'd like you to think about it, because working with you these past 2 weeks, despite the mortal danger and constant stress, it's been good. You challenge me, keep me honest, make me remember why I started this company in the first place. I'd like to keep that, if you're interested. Eli looked at her across the table. This woman who'd become so much more than a client or a mission, who understood loss and fear and the weight of impossible choices, who looked at him and saw not just a weapon or a tool, but a person worth knowing. I'm interested, he said, in the job, in working with you, in whatever we're building here that feels like it might be important. Claire's smile was soft, genuine. Good. Then let's make sure we survive tomorrow so we can actually build it. They sat together in comfortable silence, drinking coffee, occasionally reviewing the operation plans, but mostly just being present. At some point, Claire's hand found his across the table, and they stayed connected like that until dawn started painting the windows gray. Tomorrow came too quickly and too slowly all at once. Eli woke from a fitful few hours of sleep to find the safe house already buzzing with activity. FBI tactical teams were arriving, receiving briefings, checking equipment. Chen moved through the organized chaos like a conductor, coordinating dozens of moving pieces. Sophie had breakfast with Claire, chattering about her homework and seemingly oblivious to the armed federal agents filling every room. But when Eli sat down with her, she got quiet. You're going somewhere dangerous today, she said. Not a question. Yeah, Peanut, I am. To catch the bad man who hurt Miss Claire. That's right. Sophie pushed her cereal around her bowl, thinking, will you be careful? Always am. Will you come back? The question broke his heart. She'd asked it before, years ago, when he'd done a brief security consulting job that required overnight travel. Always the same question, always the same fear, that he'd leave and never return, like her mother had. I promise, Eli said, pulling her close. I promise I'm coming back. Miss Claire and I are going to catch the bad guy, and then we're coming back here, and then we're going to figure out what comes next, together. All 3 of us. You promise? I promise. She hugged him tight, and Eli felt the weight of that promise settle over him like armor. He would come back. No matter what happened, no matter what it took, he would survive this because Sophie needed him to. The operation was scheduled for 8 p.m., after dark, when Steele would feel confident making a move, but before the facility's overnight security shift started. Chen had leaked information through channels they knew Steele monitored. Claire Donovan alive, hiding at the Westchester data center, documents secured but not yet transmitted to authorities. Vulnerable. Exposed. Perfect target. Eli and Claire were fitted with body armor hidden under normal clothes, wire mics, GPS trackers. Torres and Kim would be positioned inside the facility as supposed security guards, deep cover, ready to respond. Martinez would coordinate from a command vehicle half a mile away. Chen would lead the tactical teams positioned around the perimeter. Remember, Chen briefed them one final time, you're not actually in danger. The moment Steele makes a move, we close in. Your job is just to be visible, be believable, and trust us to do our jobs. And if something goes wrong? Eli asked. Then you do what you do best. Keep Claire alive until we can secure the situation. But nothing's going wrong. We've planned for every contingency. Famous last words, Eli thought, but didn't say. The drive to Westchester was tense and silent. Claire sat beside Eli in the back of an unmarked vehicle, her hand gripping his so tight he was losing circulation. He didn't complain. Just held on and watched the sunset paint the sky in colors that felt ominous. The data center was exactly as the schematics had shown. Isolated buildings surrounded by fencing, minimal windows, multiple access points. They entered through the main entrance, checked in with Torres, who was playing the role of security guard, and were escorted to a third-floor office that had been staged to look like they'd been hiding there. Cameras are live, Martinez's voice in their earpieces. We've got eyes on every approach. Steele's vehicle just left his Manhattan residence, headed your direction. ETA 45 minutes. 45 minutes of waiting. Eli used the time to do what he always did, check sight lines, identify exit routes, position furniture to provide cover if needed. Claire sat at a desk, pretending to review the documents, but he could see her hands shaking. Talk to me, Eli said, sitting beside her. What are you thinking? That this is insane, that we're trusting the FBI to protect us from a man who's evaded justice for 23 years, that so many things could go wrong. All true, but also we're about to end this. Your father's conspiracy, the people who killed my father, all of it. Tonight it ends. That's worth the risk. Is it? What if something happens to you? What if Sophie is safe? She's surrounded by federal agents and Martinez's team. Nothing's happening to her, and nothing's happening to me or you because we're smarter than Steele. We're ready for him, and we have an entire tactical team backing us up. Claire leaned against him, careful of his injured shoulder. When this is over, I'm taking a vacation, somewhere with beaches and drinks with umbrellas and absolutely no corporate espionage. Sounds good. Can I come? Only if you bring Sophie. She deserves a beach vacation. Deal. Martinez's voice interrupted their moment. Steele's vehicle is turning onto Facility Access Road. Multiple occupants. Looks like he brought backup. 4 men, all armed. This is happening. Eli's training kicked in. His heartbeat slowed to combat rhythm. His breathing steadied. His mind cleared of everything except tactical awareness. Remember the plan, Chen's voice. Let him come to you. We need him to make a move, say something incriminating. Then we take him. Through the office window, Eli watched a black SUV pull into the parking lot. 4 men emerged, and even from this distance, he recognized the body language. Professional, coordinated, dangerous. But the 5th person to exit made his blood run cold. Cameron Steele. Distinguished, calm, walking like he owned the world and everything in it. He's here, Claire whispered. I know. Stay calm. Trust the plan. Footsteps on the stairs. Voices outside the door. Then the handle turned and Steele walked in, flanked by 2 of his security team. He looked at Eli and Claire with an expression that was almost disappointed. I really hoped you'd be smarter than this, Steele said. Hiding in one of my own facilities? That's just insulting. We needed somewhere secure while we figure out our next move, Claire said, voice shaking just enough to sell the fear. Your next move should have been running, far and fast. Instead, you stayed close, stayed predictable. Steele gestured, and his men moved to flank the exits. Give me the documents. They're already gone, Claire said. Already with the FBI. No, they're not. We've been monitoring FBI communication. If they had evidence, they'd have moved on me already. You're bluffing. Steele pulled out a gun, not pointing it at them yet, just holding it casually. Last chance, the documents. This is it, Martinez's voice in Eli's ear. Incriminating statements, weapons drawn. We're moving in. But something felt wrong. Steele was too calm, too confident, like he was reading from a script he'd written himself. Then Eli saw it. Steele's earpiece, the almost imperceptible way his eyes flicked to the corners of the room where cameras would be hidden. He knew. Somehow, he knew this was a trap. It's a setup, Eli said quietly, but not to Steele. To Chen, to Martinez, to anyone listening. He knows. This is a counter-trap. Steele smiled. Very good, Mr. Turner. Yes, I know. Did you really think I wouldn't have FBI assets on my payroll? That I wouldn't be monitoring their operations? I've been selling intelligence for 2 decades. The Bureau is just another customer. He raised his gun, pointing it at Claire. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to give me the documents, then I'm going to kill you both. And then I'm going to disappear before Chen's tactical teams, who are about to discover their vehicles have been disabled, can respond. Clean, simple, profitable. Everything happened at once. Steele's finger tightened on the trigger. Eli moved, throwing himself between the gun and Claire, his body armor hopefully enough to stop. The gunshot was deafening in the small space, but Eli didn't feel the impact. Instead, he felt something else. A surge of electricity, starting in his chest and racing through his body like lightning. Not painful, but powerful. Overwhelming. Time seemed to slow. Eli could see the bullet, could track its trajectory, could feel the air currents in the room shifting. And without conscious thought, without understanding how or why, he raised his hand. The lights exploded. Every bulb in the office, every screen, every electrical device, they all surged and shattered simultaneously, plunging the room into darkness. But Eli could still see, his vision somehow adjusted, picking up electrical fields and heat signatures, and the electromagnetic spectrum in ways that shouldn't be possible. He could feel the building's power grid, could sense every wire and circuit and current flowing through the walls. And more than that, he could manipulate it. With a thought, he killed the power to the entire facility. Emergency lights struggled to activate, but he shut those down too. Complete darkness. Complete chaos. Steele was shouting, his men were stumbling, Claire was pressing against his back in terror. But Eli's mind was racing ahead, tactical possibilities multiplying. The facility's electronic locks, powered by the grid he now controlled. He released them, opening every door, every exit, giving the FBI teams clear access. The vehicles Steele claimed to have disabled, Eli could feel their electrical systems from here, could jumpstart them with focused intention. He was a walking, breathing electromagnetic pulse, and he was done being hunted. Torres Kim, now! Eli shouted, and his teammates moved from their positions, night vision giving them advantage in the darkness. Gunfire erupted, but Eli could track it, could feel the electrical impulses in the weapons themselves, could disrupt them with concentrated thought. Steele's gun misfired, one of his men's weapons jammed. The third managed to get a shot off, but Eli knew exactly where it was going and pulled Claire clear. What the hell are you? Steele's voice, terrified now instead of confident. Justice, Eli said, and meant it. The tactical teams breached, flashlights cutting through darkness, professional voices shouting commands. Steele and his men were on the ground in seconds, zip-tied, rights being read. Chen appeared, weapon drawn, surveying the chaos. What happened to the power? She demanded. Electrical malfunction, Eli said, the lie coming easily. Building's old, systems overloaded. Chen didn't look like she believed him, but she had bigger problems. Steele was in custody, his men were secured, and most importantly, Claire was safe. Later, after statements and medical checks and the endless bureaucracy of federal law enforcement, Eli and Claire sat in the back of an ambulance while paramedics checked them over. The The power in the facility had mysteriously restored itself the moment Eli had consciously decided to let go of his control. He still didn't understand what had happened, how he'd done it, or what it meant. "Did you feel that?" Claire asked quietly. "The electricity, the way everything just stopped." "Yeah, I felt it." "What was that?" Eli looked at his hands, remembering the surge of power, the feeling of connection to every current in the building. "I don't know, but I think I need to find out." "Later," Claire said firmly. "Right now, let's just accept that we're alive, Steele is in custody, and it's over." "Is it?" Eli looked toward the facility, where FBI agents were systematically securing evidence. Steele had resources, connections, contingencies. This might just be the beginning. "Then we'll face it. Together." Claire took his hand. "But tonight, can we just breathe? Can we just be grateful we survived?" Eli thought about Sophie waiting for him at the safe house, thought about the promise he'd made to come back, thought about the life he wanted to build once the dust settled. "Yeah," he said. "Tonight we can breathe." But even as he said it, he knew this wasn't over. Steele might be in custody, but there were still unanswered questions, still unexplained abilities that scared him almost as much as they fascinated him, still one final confrontation waiting in the wings. The safe house felt different when they returned that night. Lighter somehow, as if the weight of conspiracy and danger had finally lifted enough to let ordinary air back in. Sophie was still awake despite the late hour, sitting between Martinez and Rodriguez on the couch, all three of them watching some animated movie that had been paused the moment the door opened. She didn't run to Eli this time. Instead, she stood slowly, studied his face with those two old eyes, and seemed to be assessing whether he was really okay or just pretending for her benefit. "You came back," she said finally. "I promised, didn't I?" "Promises can break. Mom promised she'd get better." The words hit Eli like a physical blow. Sophie rarely talked about Emma's death directly, usually dancing around it with carefully vague language. This bluntness meant she'd been scared, really scared. He crossed the room and knelt in front of her, ignoring the protest from his injured shoulder. "You're right. Sometimes promises break, even when we mean them with everything we have. Your mom didn't choose to break her promise. The cancer made that choice for her. But I'm here, I'm okay, and the bad guy who was trying to hurt Miss Claire is in jail now. It's over." Sophie looked past him to where Claire stood in the doorway. "Is it really over?" Claire moved forward, kneeling beside Eli. "The man who was responsible for all of this has been arrested. The FBI has enough evidence to put him away for a very long time. There might be some scary news stories in the next few days, and we'll probably have to answer more questions, but yes, the dangerous part is over." "Promise?" Sophie's voice was small. "I promise," Claire said, and held out her pinky. Sophie linked her smaller finger with Claire's, then reached for Eli's, creating a three-way connection that felt like more than just a childhood ritual. Felt like family. Martinez cleared his throat from the couch. "Well, since the crisis is officially resolved, I'm going to order pizza. Figure we've earned some terrible food and worse movies. Torres is already asleep upstairs. Man can sleep through anything. Kim and Rodriguez are on perimeter watch for another hour. Then we're all officially off duty." "Off duty sounds amazing," Eli said, standing carefully. His whole body ached. The shoulder wound, the adrenaline crash, the strange electrical surge he still didn't understand. "Pizza sounds even better." They settled in the living room like a mismatched family. Eli and Claire on the couch with Sophie between them. Martinez sprawled in an armchair, Cooper the dog somehow taking up an entire corner despite being medium-sized. The movie resumed, some story about a fish trying to find his way home, and Sophie provided running commentary that made everyone laugh. But Eli couldn't fully relax. His mind kept circling back to what had happened at the facility. The surge of power, the feeling of connection to the electrical grid, the way he'd manipulated currents with nothing but intention. It shouldn't be possible. Human bodies generated small electrical fields, sure, but what he'd done went far beyond normal biology. Claire must have sensed his tension because she leaned close and whispered, "We'll figure it out. Whatever happened tonight, whatever you can do, we'll understand it together. But not tonight. Tonight we just exist." So Eli tried. He watched the movie, ate pizza that was indeed terrible, Listened to Sophie giggle at jokes she'd heard before but still found funny. Let himself be present in this moment of peace, even knowing that questions and complications waited in the morning. Sophie fell asleep before the movie ended, her head heavy on Claire's lap. Claire stroked her hair absently, and Eli watched them together. This woman he'd known for only 2 weeks, but who felt essential now, and his daughter, who'd somehow adopted Claire as a permanent fixture in their strange little family. "She really likes you," Eli said quietly. "The feeling is mutual. She's extraordinary, Eli. Brave and smart and kind despite everything she's been through. You've done an incredible job raising her alone. Didn't have much choice. Emma died and someone had to step up. A lot of people would have done the minimum. You gave her everything." Claire glanced at him. "Are you going to tell me what really happened at the facility? The lights, the electrical surge, that wasn't a malfunction." Eli was quiet for a long moment. "I don't know what it was. I just felt something, like every nerve in my body connected to the building's power grid. And I could control it, shape it, kill the lights, open the electronic locks, disrupt the weapons. It felt as natural as breathing and as impossible as flying." "Have you ever experienced anything like that before?" "Never. Not in combat, not in training, not ever." He looked at his hands, half expecting to see electricity dancing between his fingers. "I don't understand it. Don't know if it'll happen again or if it was just some one-time stress response. But Claire, if this is something I can do, something I can't control, it could be dangerous. To you, to Sophie, to anyone around me." "Or it could be a gift," Claire said. "Something that saved our lives tonight. Something that stopped Steele when conventional tactics weren't enough." She shifted carefully so as not to wake Sophie. "Whatever it is, we'll figure it out. Together. That's what we do now, face impossible things together." Martinez stood, stretching. "I'm going to grab some sleep before my watch rotation. You two should do the same. Tomorrow starts the fun part. Media statements, FBI debriefings, legal proceedings. Going to need your rest." He left, and the house settled into quiet. Eli carefully lifted Sophie, carried her to the bedroom she'd claimed, tucked her in with Mr. Bear. When he returned, Claire was still on the couch, looking exhausted, but unable or unwilling to move. "Stay," she said when Eli started toward his own room. "Just for a while. I don't want to be alone yet." So Eli sat back down, and Claire leaned against him, and they stayed like that while the house settled around them. At some point they must have fallen asleep because Eli woke to early morning light and Claire's head on his shoulder, his arm around her, both of them cramped and uncomfortable, but somehow reluctant to move. "Morning," Claire mumbled without opening her eyes. "Morning. We should probably get up before Sophie finds us like this and gets ideas." "Too late," Sophie's voice came from the doorway. "I already have ideas. Are you two dating now?" Eli felt his face heat. "That's complicated, Peanut." "Looks simple to me. You like each other. You're cuddling. That's dating." Sophie grinned. "It's okay, Dad. I like Miss Claire. She can be your girlfriend." "Oh my God," Eli muttered while Claire laughed. "Since when did you become a relationship expert?" "Since I started 4th grade. Maya says 4th grade is when you learn about romance. Also, there's cereal in the kitchen, and Martinez says we have to go to the FBI office today to answer more questions." She skipped away, apparently satisfied with her matchmaking efforts. Claire was still laughing. "Well, that settles it. Sophie has spoken. I'm officially your girlfriend." "Is that how this works?" According to 4th grade wisdom, apparently yes. She sat up, running fingers through messy hair. "Though I suppose we should probably have an actual conversation about what we want this to be, once the chaos settles." "Yeah," Eli agreed. "Once the chaos settles." But the chaos, it turned out, was just beginning its next phase. The FBI office was controlled chaos. Agent Chen had assembled what she called a tiger team, specialists in corporate espionage, cybercrime, and intelligence analysis, all working to untangle the web Steele had been building for 2 decades. Eli and Claire spent hours in separate interview rooms, walking through every detail of the past 2 weeks, every piece of evidence, every interaction with Steele. By noon, Chen called them both into a conference room where a dozen screens displayed documents, communications logs, financial records, and connection maps that looked like neural networks. "This is bigger than we thought," Chen said without preamble. Steele wasn't just selling corporate secrets, he was running a full spectrum intelligence operation: defense contracts, government communications, private sector innovations. Anything that touched Nexus infrastructure was potentially compromised. We've identified at least 40 major breaches over 15 years, affecting 12 countries and hundreds of millions of dollars in stolen intellectual property. Claire looked pale. My father built all of this? Your father built the infrastructure. Steele exploited it. We found communications suggesting your father wanted out toward the end of his life. Was planning to shut down the back doors, maybe even expose the operation. That's probably what got him killed too. How did my father die? Claire's voice was barely above a whisper. Heart attack at his desk, officially, but given what we now know about Steele's resources, it's worth reinvestigating. There are substances that can trigger cardiac events that are nearly impossible to detect after the fact. Chen pulled up another screen. The good news is that Steele kept meticulous records. He was paranoid about his partners betraying him, so he documented everything: names, dates, transactions, communications. It's a prosecutor's dream. He's going away for life, along with several of his associates. What about the people he sold information to? Eli asked. Foreign governments, corporate rivals, they're still out there. That's where this gets complicated. Some of Steele's clients were hostile nations. That makes this a national security issue, which means agencies above my pay grade are getting involved. CIA, NSA, probably others I don't even know about. Chen looked at them both seriously. You're going to be asked to testify probably multiple times across multiple jurisdictions. Your lives are going to be under microscopes for months, maybe years. Are you prepared for that? Eli thought about Sophie, about the quiet life he'd been trying to build. Do we have a choice? There's always a choice. You could refuse to cooperate, take the evidence you have, and disappear. We have enough to prosecute without your testimony. It would just be harder. Chen paused. But I think you're both the kind of people who see things through, who want justice, not just survival. My father tried to expose this and died for it, Eli said. I'm not letting that be for nothing. We'll testify. We'll cooperate. Whatever it takes to make sure Steele and everyone connected to him pays for what they've done. Claire nodded agreement. Nexus Technologies is my company now, my responsibility. I need to face what it was used for and make it right. That means full transparency, complete cooperation, and accepting whatever consequences come. Good, Chen said. Because there's something else. We found references in Steele's records to a project called Lazarus. It involved human augmentation, specifically using electromagnetic manipulation to enhance physical and cognitive capabilities. The project was shut down 15 years ago after several failed trials, but there are suggestions that one subject survived the process. Eli's blood turned cold. What kind of electromagnetic manipulation? The records are incomplete, but it appears they were trying to create individuals who could interface with electrical systems, control them through biological means. Essentially, living electromagnetic pulses. Chen pulled up a document, redacted heavily, but with enough visible to make Eli's stomach drop. The project was conducted on military personnel, volunteers who were told they were participating in standard enhancement trials. Most died. A few survived, but with severe complications. One disappeared from records entirely about 6 years ago. 6 years ago. Right when Eli left the Navy, right when he decided he needed to disappear to build a life away from the military and its secrets. You think I was part of this, Eli said. Were you? I don't know. I participated in some trials during my time with the teams, testing new gear, medical interventions, that kind of thing. But nothing that involved electromagnetic manipulation, nothing that would explain what happened last night. What did happen last night? Chen's gaze was sharp. Eli glanced at Claire, who gave a small nod. Trust. They'd agreed to trust. I controlled the building's electrical grid, Eli admitted, not with tools or technology, with intention. I could feel every current, every wire, every device, and I could manipulate them, kill the power, restore it, disrupt specific systems. It shouldn't be possible, but I did it. Chen was quiet for a long moment. We need to run some tests, medical scans, blood work, controlled demonstrations. If you were part of Lazarus and somehow the augmentation activated under stress, we need to understand it for your safety and for national security. And if I refuse? Then you remain a potential security risk and other agencies get involved. Agencies that won't ask politely. Chen's expression was sympathetic but firm. I'm trying to help you, Turner, but you need to meet me halfway. Eli looked at Claire again. She reached for his hand under the table, squeezed. We do this together, she said. Whatever tests they need to run, whatever they need to understand, we face it together. The next week was a blur of medical examinations, controlled demonstrations, and slowly dawning understanding. The doctors confirmed what Eli had feared. His body had been altered at a cellular level, his nervous system rewired to generate and manipulate electromagnetic fields. The augmentation had been dormant for years, probably suppressed by regular stress management and a conscious effort to avoid high-voltage situations. But the extreme threat at the facility had triggered it fully, and now there was no putting that genie back in the bottle. Think of it like a muscle, Dr. Sarah Martinez, no relation to his friend, explained. She was a neurologist specializing in experimental augmentation, brought in specifically to assess Eli's condition. The more you use it, the stronger and more controlled it becomes. Right now, you're essentially an infant learning to walk. But with training, you could potentially control your ability precisely. Or I could accidentally kill someone by disrupting their pacemaker, Eli said. That's why we train, why we practice, why we understand the limits and capabilities. Dr. Martinez pulled up scans of Eli's brain, showing unusual patterns in his neural activity. You're unique, Mr. Turner, the only confirmed successful subject of Lazarus that we know of. That makes you valuable. And unfortunately, it makes you a target. What do you mean? The people who ran Lazarus, they're not all in custody. Steele was one player, but the program had military and intelligence backing. If they find out you're the success they've been looking for, they'll want to study you, replicate you, potentially control you. Claire, who'd been sitting quietly through most of the examination, spoke up. So what are you suggesting? That Eli goes into hiding? That he becomes a lab rat for the rest of his life? I'm suggesting that he works with us willingly before others force the issue. FBI can offer protection, resources, training. In exchange, Eli helps us understand the technology, provides testimony about Lazarus, and occasionally assists with situations where his abilities might be useful. Dr. Martinez looked at Eli directly. You were a SEAL. You understand duty and service. This is another form of that. Eli thought about Sophie, about the life he wanted to give her, thought about Claire, and the future they were trying to build, thought about his father, who died trying to expose corruption and abuse. I'll cooperate, he said, but on my terms. I'm not becoming a weapon for anyone. I'll train, I'll testify, I'll help when it's right, but Sophie comes first, always. And if anyone tries to use her as leverage or threatens her safety because of what I am, all deals are off. Agreed, Dr. Martinez said. We're not monsters, Mr. Turner. We're trying to do right by you while also protecting national security. Sophie will be protected. You have my word. It took another month for the immediate chaos to settle. Steele was formally charged with espionage, corporate fraud, conspiracy to commit murder, and about 40 other counts that would keep him in prison for multiple lifetimes. 6 of his associates were also arrested, including 2 sitting congressmen and a defense contractor CEO. The scandal dominated news cycles, and while Claire and Eli's roles were public knowledge, Chen managed to keep the details of Lazarus classified. Sophie started back at Greenwich Academy, this time with actual security instead of just hope. She was happy there, had made friends, was thriving in ways that made Eli's chest tight with gratitude. Her experimental treatment at Johns Hopkins was approved and funded, partly by insurance, partly by an anonymous benefactor that Eli suspected was Claire despite her denials. Martinez and his team rotated through, providing additional security and becoming adopted uncles to Sophie. Torres taught her card tricks. Kim showed her basic self-defense. Rodriguez gave her terrible relationship advice that she absolutely did not need at 9 years old. And slowly, carefully, Eli and Claire figured out what they were building together. It started with coffee in the morning, sitting on the guest house porch while Sophie got ready for school. progressed to dinner together most nights, sometimes at the main house, sometimes at their smaller space. Claire read Sophie bedtime stories while Eli cleaned up, and they'd meet afterward to talk about the day, about nothing, about everything. One evening, about 6 weeks after Steele's arrest, Claire found Eli in the guest house living room, staring at a legal document. "What's that?" she asked. "Nexus Technologies employment contract. Head of security position, full benefits, ridiculous salary." Eli looked up at her. "You serious about this offer?" "Completely serious. I need someone I trust to rebuild our entire security infrastructure. Someone who understands both the technical side and the human element. Someone who won't compromise or cut corners." She sat beside him. "But more than that, I want you around." "Is that selfish?" "Probably. But I've gotten used to having you in my life. I'd like to keep it that way." "What about the electromagnetic thing? Doesn't that complicate employment?" "We'll figure it out. Put it in your contract that you occasionally consult on classified projects. Give you flexibility when Dr. Martinez needs you for training or FBI needs your help. Make it work because it's worth making work." "Well," Claire took the contract from his hand, set it aside. "Eli, I'm not just offering you a job. I'm offering you a partnership. In business, in life, in whatever we're building here, if you want it." "What about Sophie? She deserves stability, not—" "Sophie deserves a father who's happy. A father who's not working himself to death at jobs he hates. A father who has a partner who loves him." Claire paused. "I do, love you. I didn't mean to. It's too fast, too complicated, but there it is. I love you, and I love Sophie. And I want to build something real with both of you, if you'll let me." Eli felt something unlock in his chest. Something that had been closed since Emma died, since he'd decided that surviving was enough, and happiness was a luxury he couldn't afford. "I love you too," he said, the words feeling both terrifying and right. "I have for weeks, but I didn't know how to say it, didn't know if I was allowed to feel it. But yeah, I love you, and Sophie loves you. And this, whatever we're building, it feels like the future I didn't know I could have." They kissed, soft and slow and full of promise. When they pulled apart, Sophie was standing in her bedroom doorway, grinning. "Finally," she announced, "I've been waiting forever for you two to figure it out." "How long have you been standing there?" Eli asked. "Long enough to hear the gross love confessions. Also, Miss Claire, are you going to be my stepmom now? Because Maya says when grown-ups say they love each other, they usually get married eventually." Claire laughed. "Let's take it one step at a time, okay? Right now, we're dating. When we're ready for more, you'll be the first to know." "Okay. But just so you know, I'm ready whenever you are. I've always wanted a mom." Sophie said it casually, but Eli heard the weight behind the words, the longing she rarely expressed directly. Claire crossed the room, knelt in front of Sophie. "I would be honored to be your mom someday, when the time is right, when we've all had a chance to grow into this. But Sophie, I already think of you as mine, already care about you like you're my own. That doesn't require a wedding or legal paperwork. That just is." Sophie hugged her tight, and Eli watched his two favorite people hold on to each other and felt his eyes burn. 6 months later, Eli stood in a courthouse wearing a suit that still felt strange, watching Claire in a simple white dress that somehow made her look more beautiful than any designer gown could. Sophie stood between them, holding both their hands, wearing a purple dress she'd picked herself and a flower crown Torres had helped her make. "This is weird," Sophie whispered. "Good weird, but weird." "Agreed," Eli whispered back. The ceremony was small. Martinez and his team, Dr. Sarah Martinez, who'd become a friend, Agent Chen, who'd worked so hard to keep them safe, Rebecca Walsh and Michael Chen from Nexus, and a handful of others who'd been part of their strange journey. No big production, no media circus, just the people who mattered, bearing witness to something real. When the officiant asked if anyone objected, Sophie raised her hand. Everyone froze. "I object to having to wait this long," she announced seriously. "You two took forever. I've been ready since, day 3. Laughter rippled through the small gathering. The officiant, recovering his composure, smiled. "Noted for the record. Anyone else?" Silence. Good silence, the kind full of support and happiness. Then by the power vested in me by the state of Connecticut, I now pronounce you married. You may kiss. They kissed while Sophie made exaggerated gagging noises and everyone laughed. When they pulled apart, Claire looked at Sophie. Ready for the second part? She asked. So ready? The officiant produced another set of papers, adoption documents that had been months in the making. Claire had formally petitioned to adopt Sophie, with Eli's full support and Sophie's enthusiastic consent. The paperwork was already approved, just waiting for signatures on a day that meant something. Sophie Turner, the officiant read. Do you consent to be adopted by Claire Donovan Turner to become her legal daughter in all ways? I do, Sophie said, voice strong despite the tears streaming down her face. They signed the papers together, Claire's elegant signature next to Sophie's careful 9-year-old handwriting, and suddenly they were officially a family. Not just in heart, but in law. The reception was held at the Greenwich House, catered by the fancy restaurant Claire liked and decorated by Sophie, with Torres's questionable help. It was chaotic and perfect and exactly right. Martinez cornered Eli at one point, handed him a beer. You did good, brother. Found something worth holding on to. Thanks for having my back. Through all of it. Always, that's what family does. Martinez clinked his bottle against Eli's. Emma would be happy for you, you know. She'd want this for you and Sophie. Want you to move forward, be happy. Don't carry guilt about that. I know. It just took me a while to believe I deserved it. You do. You always did. You just had to find someone who could convince you of that. Later, when most guests had left and Sophie had crashed hard from excitement and sugar, Eli and Claire stood on the back porch watching stars emerge over Connecticut. Claire leaned against him, her head on his shoulder, his arm around her waist. Mrs. Donovan Turner, Eli said, testing the name. Mr. Donovan Turner, right back at you. We're hyphenating. It's modern. It's complicated. So are we. Seems fitting. She turned to look up at him. Are you happy? Really happy? Eli thought about his daughter sleeping upstairs, safe and healthy and loved. Thought about the woman in his arms who'd become his partner in every way that mattered. Thought about the job waiting for him on Monday, meaningful work that used his skills for protection instead of destruction. Thought about his father, who'd died fighting for what was right, and felt like maybe, finally, he was honoring that legacy properly. Yeah, he said, I'm really happy. Good. Because this is just the beginning. We've got a company to rebuild, a daughter to raise, and probably more complications neither of us can predict yet. Bring it on. We can handle it. We can handle anything, Claire agreed. Together. 3 years later, Eli sat in a different office, his office at Nexus Technologies, where he now ran a security division that was internationally recognized for its integrity and innovation. The walls held photos of Sophie at various ages, awards the company had won for ethical business practices, and a framed newspaper clipping from the diner incident that had started everything. His phone buzzed, text from Claire. Board meeting running long. Can you pick up Sophie from practice? Eli. On it. See you at home. Home. The word still felt miraculous sometimes. They'd moved into a new house 6 months ago. Nothing as ostentatious as the Greenwich estate, but spacious enough for a family, with a yard where Cooper could run and Sophie could practice soccer. It felt like theirs in a way no other place ever had. He arrived at the field to find Sophie, now 12 and somehow already as tall as Claire's shoulder, in the middle of a drill, running circles around kids twice her size. The experimental treatment had worked. She'd been in full remission for 2 years, her JIA barely a memory except for occasional checkups. She saw him watching and waved, nearly colliding with another player in her distraction. Her coach called her over, probably giving her grief for not paying attention, and Sophie jogged to the sideline grinning. How was your day? She asked, exactly the way Emma used to. Good. Yours? Maya and I are working on a project for the science fair. We're building a program that helps animal shelters manage their resources better. Mom said she'd help with the code if we get stuck. Mom. Sophie had started calling Claire that about a year after the adoption, hesitant at first, then with increasing confidence. It never stopped making both Claire and Eli emotional. Sounds ambitious. I'm proud of you. Thanks, Dad. She grabbed her bag. Can we stop for ice cream on the way home? What's the occasion? Do I need an occasion for ice cream? Fair point, let's go. They drove through familiar streets, talking about nothing important, and Eli marveled at how normal this had become, how the extraordinary had transformed into everyday life. He still worked occasionally with Dr. Martinez, training his electromagnetic abilities, consulting on classified projects, still testified when needed about Steele and Lazarus and the conspiracy that had taken his father. But mostly, he lived. He was a husband, a father, a professional doing work that mattered. At home, Claire was already there, having escaped her meeting early. She kissed Eli hello, hugged Sophie, and announced she'd already ordered dinner because cooking was not happening tonight. They ate together at the kitchen table, sharing stories about their days, laughing at Sophie's impression of her soccer coach, planning a weekend trip to the beach. Normal family moments that felt precious, because Eli remembered when they seemed impossible. Later, after Sophie went to bed, Eli found Claire in her home office, reviewing plans for the Nexus Foundation, a nonprofit they'd started together to provide resources for kids with chronic illnesses, funding treatments that insurance wouldn't cover, supporting families who were struggling the way Eli once had. We got another grant approved, Claire said, looking up. The Johns Hopkins Partnership. We'll be able to fund 30 treatment protocols next year. That's 30 kids who get a chance Sophie almost didn't have. Exactly. Claire closed her laptop, stretched. I've been thinking about something, about expanding the Foundation's mission. Yeah? I want to create a program for military families. Support for veterans transitioning to civilian life, resources for kids dealing with trauma, connections to employment opportunities. Call it the Robert Turner Initiative after your father. Honor what he tried to do by helping people find their way back from the edge. Eli felt his throat tighten. He would have liked that, using what was taken from him to help others. Is that a yes? That's a yes. They went to bed not long after, exhausted but content. Eli lay awake for a while, listening to Claire breathe beside him, thinking about the strange path that had brought them here. A random morning at a diner, a split-second decision to act instead of hide, weeks of danger and revelation and slowly falling in love. His phone lit up with a message from Martinez. Saw the news about the Foundation expansion. Your dad would be proud, brother. So am I. Eli smiled, typed back. Thanks for everything. Couldn't have survived without you. Martinez. That's what family does. Speaking of, Torres is getting married next month. You're invited. Sophie can come if she wants to see terrible dancing. Eli. We'll be there. He set the phone down and pulled Claire closer. She made a sleepy sound, settled against him. Love you, she mumbled. Love you too. It wasn't the life he'd planned. Wasn't the future he'd imagined when he'd left the Navy broken and grieving, when he'd taken 2 terrible jobs just to keep Sophie housed and medicated, when he'd convinced himself that survival was enough. But it was better. Better than anything he could have dreamed. Better than he'd thought he deserved. And every day, he chose it. Chose Claire, chose Sophie, chose the work they did together. Chose to honor his father's memory not through revenge or bitterness, but through building something good. Through helping others find their way through darkness. Through choosing love, family, and kindness every single day. Because in the end, that was what real heroism looked like. Not firefights or dramatic rescues, though those had their place, but the quiet daily choice to show up, to care, to make the world a little bit better for the people within reach. Eli Turner, former Navy SEAL, husband, father, survivor, had finally learned that lesson. And he spent the rest of his days teaching it to his daughter, living it with his wife, and proving that sometimes the greatest victories were the ones that looked like ordinary happiness. Outside, the Connecticut night was quiet and peaceful. Inside, a family slept, secure and loved and whole. And somewhere in the darkness, justice continued its slow, steady work, ensuring that those who'd hurt so many finally faced the consequences they'd evaded for too long. But that was someone else's fight now. Eli's war was over. His life was just beginning, and it was extraordinary in all the best, most ordinary ways.